To begin with, it seems like every council meeting, I'm asking to take a few seconds out and think. We saw the hurricanes that hit Texas and then Florida, the devastation and terrorist attack in Las Vegas, and now the fires up in Northern California that have hit us. And I know I spoke to our fire chief, and we have sent trucks up to Napa and up to the Northern California. We also sent some of our firefighters down to Anaheim when the fire was there. And it just so saddens me that so many of these people are put in harm's way, not by choice. But I would like to take just a few seconds to have those people in your thoughts. Thank you. The first item this evening is a proclamation, and Councilmember Boyson will be making the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a proclamation for Freedom from Workplace Bullying Week. Whereas the City of Santa Maria has an interest in promoting the social and economic well-being of its employees, residents, and businesses, and whereas that well-being depends upon the existence of healthy and productive employees working in a safe and abuse-free environment. Whereas research has documented the stress-related health consequences for individuals caused by exposure to abusive work environments, and whereas abusive work environments are costly to employers with consequences including reduced productivity, absenteeism, turnover, employee dissatisfaction, and injuries. And whereas protection from abusive work environments should apply to every worker and not be limited to legally protected class status based only on race, color, gender, national origin, age, and disability. Now therefore, Alice Patino, Mayor of the City of Santa Maria, hereby recognizes the week of October 15th through the 21st, 2017 as Freedom from Workplace Bullying Week in the City of Santa Maria, and commend the California Healthy Workplace Advocates and the Workplace Bullying Institute for raising awareness of the issue, and encourage all residents and businesses to mark this week with special activities and programs to break through the shame and silence enshrouding adult bullying at work. And here to accept the proclamation is Linda George.
Not used to the traffic here. Actually, my whole family's from this area, and I want to thank you for providing the proclamation for the Workplace Bullying Institute. I was targeted for 8 years, and I actually took it upon myself to testify in trying to advocate for a bill for city, county, and state employees. There's a one-year adverse action rule for CHP and for fire, but not for admin staff. You get 3 years. We get 3 years. I testified with the head of the Dr. Bussey for the UAPD. At the end of my testimony, Senator Diane Harkey asked me if they got fired. And she said the same thing happened to her sister, except her sister had a nervous breakdown. She had to sell her house, take in her animals, and admit her sister. So this is something that's becoming more profound for awareness, and I want to thank you guys for bringing awareness to Santa Maria. It makes a difference. And this proclamation will be on our Facebook page in the next 24 hours, and it'll be on the main Workplace Bullying Institute page also. But I know that doesn't happen here, though.
Thank
You guys have a day.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda this evening is the public comment period. Madam Clerk, could you please read the criteria for the public comment portion of the agenda?
This time is reserved to accept comments from the public on consent agenda items, closed session items, or matters not otherwise scheduled on the agenda. Unless otherwise directed by the mayor, speakers will have 3 minutes to comment. Direction to staff may be given, however, state law does not allow action to be taken by the city council on matters not on the printed agenda this evening. Once the public comment period commences, no other speakers will be allowed to submit a request to speak form. And Madam Mayor, I have 4 requests to speak.
Thank you, thank you. Okay.
You actually have 5.
5, okay. Gracie Sanchez, followed by Connie, I can't read that. Logan? Okay. Logan, followed by Jeff, can't read that, followed by Mr. Armenta, and then Roger Whiteman. Okay, so Gracie Sanchez first.
It's pronounced Ignacio Sanchez, ma'am.
Ignacio, oh, I'm sorry, Ignacio.
Yes.
Okay, Ignacio, okay.
But if you like, you can call me Nacho at the same time.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how important it is or like how much care each person has as in matters like this, but I actually wish to speak on the sides of like where the homeless comes from, where drug communities comes from, and where the illegal immigrants come from. I mean, San Maria is a real big place and does take a big part in this world, this whole area. San Maria is known for strawberries, for its seasoning, for its barbecue. Guadalupe is known for its broccoli and has many movies out filmed down on the dunes. And San Maria once was really, really populated, really huge, right? After Donald Trump's immigration laws, a lot of people have been sent away back to Mexico. People that haven't spent their whole life in Mexico, people my age now living in Mexico. I mean, it don't sound right to me. It doesn't sound right that some people are even struggling with it. I don't even know who left Mexico because the moment that the law was enforced, they couldn't tell me that they got picked up. They couldn't tell me that they're gone. And same with the drug community. I mean, drugs aren't for everyone, but all the same, I mean, we can't deny that medical marijuana has played a great aid savior in today's cancer victims. And that if it was the same as 20 years ago, many people would be in jail. Many people I actually met coming off the Greyhound bus was doing 25 to life on a marijuana charge, and they got released because of President Obama. They're so happy. They're so happy just to hear that marijuana is legal. I'm really happy to know that the kids today will never have to go through a system being prosecuted for weed, being kicked out of school for weed, or being discriminated by work, you know? It's actually real nice. I mean, just as you have it been told you're okay now. But for the homeless community, I mean, we were prosecuted way before we became homeless. I mean, there'll be like calls or raids by law enforcement, and they just tore up our houses room by room.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanchez.
I understand. I'm actually gonna go. I mean, I don't care much to hear the rest of the meeting, just like I don't care to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Connie Loggeman, followed by Jeff.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me again. I'm here to just update you on the Casa of Hope. We have now got our paper on its way to State of California for the 501. That's number 1. And I am privileged to tell you that I am invited down to my mentor down in San Diego on the 6th of November. I will be visiting a safe house down there, number 1 in California, matter of fact, which was started in 2007. for young women, and now she has developed a house now for 18 and under. So it's going to be a privilege. I'm really excited about going. I want to see the facility, and then I will have a chance to see the safe house itself. Now, Madam Mayor, I would love, when I get back, excuse me, to set up a meeting with you and your constituents to share that with you, because I think it's important. And find out exactly where you are with this situation in Santa Maria, and sit down and just have a tete-a-tete and get some things out and things that I want to discuss with you in private. And if that can happen, I would appreciate it very much. So with that, we're going to, anytime after this 8th of November would be good. If you can, I know your agenda is heavy, I know you're a busy lady, but I would appreciate it if we could just sit down and have that meeting.
That will be fine, and if you just contact our secretary in the city manager's office, she can set that meeting up for us.
Okay.
Thank
you so much.
Jeff, followed by Mr. Armenta, followed by Roger Whiteman.
Mayor and council members, Jeff Brubaker from the city of Santa Maria. I just want to acknowledge city and Santa Maria area transit staff for installing a sign at the transit center parking lot that says transit and museum parking only. Recently, a pattern has developed of the lot being full and RTA Route 10 park and riders being unable to find a parking spot, forcing them to cruise around nearby residential streets. I know because I ride the Route 10 with them to work each day. After the sign was installed, I did hear anecdotally that the situation has improved, if only a little. Transit is an important part of Santa Marians' choices for getting from point A to point B, and by taking the bus, these RTA riders are helping to reduce congestion for those who must drive or choose to drive to reach their destination. But the bus also means being able to idly scroll through social media, read the news or a book, get some work done, reflect, watch the landscape, watch baseball highlights, have conversations and meet people, learn Spanish, all of which I've done riding the bus. So in short, it's not lost time. So again, I want to acknowledge the City Public Works staff and SMAT staff for installing that sign and increasing the convenience of transit riders in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armenta, followed by Roger Whiteman.
This is Stephen Armenta. I will save my public comment for the later half of the meeting. But I would recommend or respectfully request Ms. Patino if you could pull up 3H and this on the consent item and explain to at least myself this resolution 2004-31 where we do, I guess we contract with the city of Upland, or I'll just wait and see if you guys will pull it up and then you'll give me an opportunity to speak on it. On the consent item 3H.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll use my public comment for later in the, okay?
Okay. Okay, Roger Whiteman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. Again, my name's Roger Whiteman. I live in Hancock Terrace at 538 East Boone. My wife and I sold our home up in Napomo, moved down here looking for a place, and just wanted to address one issue tonight, which is parking specific. I know this project has been open for a little over a year now. I don't know if you're aware, there's approximately 200 units in there. They're completely sold 100% right now. Parking is becoming a real issue, and I know that all of us that are there signed a lease that basically said one spot per unit at the facility. But what's happening now with it being full is that all of this is bleeding out to the surrounding area, and it's becoming quite difficult. And I just wanted to come tonight just to put this in your ear to maybe direct staff, the appropriate city staff, to maybe take a look at this. I'm not going to be there very long, but I just think this is a facility that was designed specific to be more of a resort atmosphere, not to be a parking lot inside. And while I get it, I do feel bad for the surrounding neighbors because everybody that has a second car there is now forced to go into the surrounding area. And I'm not sure if the gentleman prior to me was talking about what route, but I also know that people are parking over in the transit center, and that's not allowed either. So I think there might be some opportunities there from potentially doing something on East Boone, maybe with some straight parking, angle parking, or something. Again, I'm not an engineer, I don't know, I just run a hotel. Also, I know there's a vacant lot that's kitty corner from the transit center. I know it's privately owned. Maybe there could be something done there. I know that lot has sat vacant for years. Maybe that's an option to look at. And then also the area just east of Hancock Terrace, where their property line is, there's a set of bungalows there which are all commercial. And I understand that there's a portion of it there that belongs to the city that, in my estimate, again, not being an engineer, that if that was looked at and designed right, there could be maybe 30, 40 vehicles that could park in there. So I just wanted to put this out there, if you would at least take a look at it and see what might be done. If nothing, then understood, but I just wanted to be a voice of a concerned citizen because I do feel bad for the people in the surrounding area that are getting inundated constantly with the overflow parking from there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whiteman. And Mr. Chun, can you look into that? Thank you. Before we move on, Mr. Hayden, did you wish to make any comments? Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar, Madam Clerk, could you please read item number 3?
Routine items are presented for City Council approval without discussion as a single agenda item in order to expedite the meeting. Consent calendar is approved by roll call vote with one motion. These items are discussed only on the request of council members.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'd like to indicate that the Government Code 54953 requires the city to publicly announce any council actions proposed to be taken on salaries, salary schedules, or fringe benefits that apply to executive managers accordingly before the City Council this evening. As part of the agenda, item 3C is a recommendation to approve an employment agreement for new city manager Jason Stillwell. The agreement includes a salary of $7,905.81 biweekly, a benefit package that is consistent with the other non-represented management and confidential employees, as well as a 2% contribution toward a 401A deferred compensation plan that is consistent with what has been afforded past city managers. Before we go on, does anyone have any items they wish to pull for discussion?
Madam Mayor, I have item D that I need to abstain from.
None? None? And Mr. Armenta, what, an item C?
Item H, I think.
H? Oh, I'm sorry. C was the name you just did.
Yeah, I will pull that to allow Mr. Armenta to comment.
Okay. Mr. Armenta?
I thank you very much, my honorable councilman, Mr. Boyson. Mr. Boyson, I'm reading item 3H, and let me see if I got this right. There was 5 prospective bidders attended a pre-bidding meeting for tree services citywide. But if I got this right, this prospective pre-bid meeting, if I'm not mistaken, then staff can correct me, it was held outside of the city of Santa Maria? And if it was held outside of the city of Santa Maria, we have this one company from Anaheim. It is, just give me a minute till I see the name of the company here. Bear with me. Oh, here it is. To contractor, West Coast Arborists Incorporated, Anaheim, California. So my question is this, Honorable Mayor. Did any company tree services here in Santa Maria have the opportunity to put a bid and go to the pre-meeting here in the city of Santa Maria? It's either a quick yes or no.
Mr. Posada?
The answer is yes, they had the opportunity. Whether or not they did, I don't know.
Okay.
So that meeting was held here in the city of Santa Maria?
No. What happened, we're part of a larger purchasing system in California where we can piggyback is what it's called on bids that are held by other cities that conform to our purchasing guidelines. In this case, the services that West Coast Arborists provide, they're a statewide company as well as the other bidders. They're a large arborist company that give them the advantage of being able to bid large projects like ours every year. So when a city like Upland went ahead and had their bidding conference, those large companies came in and bid. A small company, maybe somebody you would find in Santa Maria, typically won't go after a large contract because of the requirements that are set out in the contract. So we look at that. It saves us the effort in having to create a whole RFP process, going out to bid, doing all the work locally. That's the idea behind the piggyback concept. So that's where the City of Upland comes into play in this particular grant contract.
Thank you, Mr. Posada.
I went by this, Mr. Cordero, my honorable councilman, Mr. Cordero, Councilman Moats, Dr. Moats, Mrs. Waterfield, and Mr. Boyson, and Ms. Patino. It's clear that if I own a tree company, I have the opportunity to bid, but I gotta go to Upland. I have no business in Upland. We, the taxpayers, have no business piggybacking on anything. You folks should be the one giving an opportunity for those tree services. Companies here in Santa Maria to put a bid and to come here locally, to somewhere here in the city to have a meeting. This is your guys' policy. Mr. Cordero, Councilman Boyson, and Mrs. Waterfield, you're asking me to, you are the only two that are up for re-election. Here's another one, Mr. Boyson. We want the city business conducted here in the city of Santa Maria. I'm not opposed to this bid. They got the contract. But it's clear, if anybody has a tree service here in Santa Maria, they have to go all the way to Upland. This is not an incentive for people to participate. So I'm asking at least two of you that are up for re-election, and Mr. Cordero and Mr. Moats, let's change this policy. We can't be cutting out the local business owners here. Give them an opportunity. So next was item C, and I would like to congratulate Mr. Sidwell as our city manager. I think I like Mr. Hayden, and I enjoyed Mr. Ness, but I think Mr. Sidwell is going to make some serious changes here, and staff better be prepared. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta.
With that, Madam Mayor, I'll move for the approval of the consent calendar with the exception of item C. No, D.
I'll second that.
Yeah. Is that a second? Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar without the item D.
Councilmember Boyson?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
And then move for the approval of consent calendar item D.
Okay, I have a first.
Second.
I have a first and a second to approve consent item calendar D. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Boyson?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield? And Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. The next order of business is a public hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
Sorry. The City Council will consider a recommendation of the Planning Commission to review a downtown permit to construct a 33,700 square foot, four-story mixed-use building on a 0.3 acre site on the corner of Main Street and Broadway in the Gateway District of the Downtown Specific Plan.
Staff report is to be made by the Community Development Director, Mr. Ng.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is a request for a mixed-use building on the northwest corner of Main and Broadway. The project was presented to the Planning Commission on September 20th, and the Planning Commission made a recommendation to approve the project with one abstention. This is a 0.3 acre site. It's a small site, and It's adjacent to the North China restaurant, just immediately south of it. The applicant, his name is Ben Nickfardrum. He purchased the property back in 2016 and proposes to tear down the existing building and to propose a 33,700 square foot, 4-story mixed-use building. So this is an image of the existing site. This is a view from Broadway, north of Main Street. And you can see a parking lot and the existing Sound of Stereo building. This is a perspective of the project site from Main Street, more from the intersection. And so again, you can see the existing single-story Sound of Stereo building and the surrounding parking lot. This is an aerial photo showing the surrounding area, and this was zoomed out in a bit to show the surrounding public parking areas. And we'll talk about parking in a moment, but we'll go through some slides showing the elevations. So this is the proposed building. Again, you can see that the bottom floor is reserved for ground floor retail, and you can also see kind of an opening to the west, and that's an opening that provides access from Main Street and the alley to a parking area that consists of 12 parking spaces. This is 12 parking spaces that would serve this building. Again, this building has ground floor retail, and the second, third, and fourth floors consists of proposed apartment units. The total number of apartment units proposed is 31 units. The second floor proposes to have 11 units, the third floor 11 units, and the fourth floor 9 units. There is some discussion with the applicant about potential office units for the second floor instead of apartments. This is another elevation view. This is a perspective looking from the alley. So again, you can see there's a small entrance off the alley into the parking area. You can see the storefronts, and you can see the tower elements and how each of the stories are stepped back a little bit, allowing for some balcony areas. And this is yet another side to this building. This is from Main Street, and you can also see the rear elevation. That's the elevation facing west, and it's not quite as decorated as the other three sides, and that's because there's an existing building directly to the west.
And that opening goes all the way through to the alley?
There is a small opening, but it would be closed off by a gate, so that that access would be it'll be closed off to people that may linger or loiter. I believe it's a 5-foot separation. These are some two-dimensional views of all 4 elevations, the front elevation, and similar to what we just seen, but just two-dimensionally. This slide contains some photos of architectural features that the proposed project would have. We saw the arched windows that the ground floor retail would have. This is what it would look like if it was built. The elevations shows dark bronze trims and Juliet balconies. So these photos, again, show what some of these features would look like if it was constructed. These are scans of the floor plan, and so to the left, you can see the row of parking and the drive aisle. That's the western portion of the project site, and the brown shaded areas is the commercial portion. It's currently proposed to be divided up into 3 units, and the smallest units, it's roughly about 1,000 square feet, and the largest unit is roughly 1,700 square feet, but this may change depending on which specific tenants they get, or the units may be combined to create a larger unit. And the floor plan on the right, it's a second floor area. It shows 11 units, and it's hard to tell from this image. You got to look pretty closely, but it's carved up into 11 apartment units. These are the floor plans for the third and fourth floor. Again, 11 units on the third floor and 9 units on the fourth floor. So again, this is the project site, and just to provide a little bit more detail for this project, as you know, the city adopted a specific plan for the downtown area, and we've had Hancock Terrace come before the city for approval, and that's technically part of the downtown area, but this is really the first project that's new construction that's on a critical corner for the downtown area. And the property owner purchased this property and is proposing a 4-story mixed use, believing that this would be successful. In the Planning Commission meeting, we did have a conversation about parking. We understand that 12 spaces are being proposed for a project with 31 apartment units. And we talked about the parking spaces within the surrounding areas. And while there is ample parking, there's over a couple hundred parking spaces within a certain radius, we also understand that there's a need to analyze the quality of those parking spaces in terms of what does that really mean for a resident parking across the street and needing to carry their groceries from that parking spot to their front door. We understand that there's a need to talk about that and whether that's convenient or not convenient. And so the commission voted for the project, understanding that there's a need for economic development in the downtown, and that this building would provide a stimulus or a catalyst, hopefully, for future developments. Parking was still a concern, and staff, we discussed with them, opportunities to perhaps explore strategies to provide parking either on the street through some type of management process. We didn't get into too much detail, but we left that opening for future discussion, that this is a concern, and that, even though the commission provided approval, that it was an issue that still needed to be addressed. And we understand that you may have some questions in regards to the parking for this project. But with that said, the recommendation is before you, a 4-story mixed-use building. This is, something that's different for our city, but at the same time, we believe that it fits the vision and goals of the downtown specific plan. And with that said, I invite any questions you may have. The applicant, Nick Farjum, or the property owner, is currently out of the country. He wishes he could be here, but he did send his architect on his behalf, and he is available to answer any questions you may have as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Ng? Mr. Boyson?
Mr. Ng, as far as the parking, how does the downtown specific plan address parking for a project like this?
There is a page in the downtown specific plan. It's difficult to summarize in a couple of sentences because it's dependent on the square footage of the apartment units and so forth. But based on the, if we were to apply the parking requirements of the downtown specific plan, 38 parking spaces would be required. And let me just double check my numbers here. Yes, 38 would be required, but instead of 38, 12 is proposed. That's also dependent on, some of these considerations are dependent on what's nearby. And so if we consider the area as a whole, there is certainly ample inventory, whether in Town Center West or the mall site, or along Lincoln or Chapel, or there's another parking area to the west of Chapel. So in consideration of the entire area, there are more than enough spaces. But again, it comes down to what's the quality of those spaces.
But if I can continue, but don't we have something in the downtown specific plan that specifically states that if you're within so many feet of city structures, of city parking structures, that you would be exempt from parking?
Yes, I have the plan here on page 44 and 45. On page 45, there's a map, and it breaks down the downtown specific plan area into 3 separate zones, Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C. This project site is in Zone A, which is kind of the center of the downtown specific plan area. And Zone A states that no parking requirements except for residential and lodging for any parcel that is within 700 feet of a city parking lot or structure. This is a project site that is within 700 feet of a city parking lot. So there are no parking requirements except for residential and lodging, of which for residential, it's half a space for units less than 400 square feet, 0.75 or 3/4 of a space for units between 400 and 600 square feet, and 1 space per unit for units more than 600 square feet. The apartment units proposed for this project, they range from about 400 up to 1,000, but most are in the range of 500-600. They're primarily 1-bedroom apartments.
Is that how you came up with 38 parking spaces?
Yes.
Through that? Okay, so there is requirement.
Right.
If I may.
Thank you.
Mr. Cordero?
Mr. Heng, did I hear you say that the residential is not exempt from the parking requirements? Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Moats?
Yeah, I've been to some places where they have heavily trafficked intersections where people can walk diagonally across, like going from the southeast to the northwest. If someone were to park for this project in the Town Center Mall East parking lot, they'd have to go through 2 signals. Is there any way that we could make it so they'd only have to go through 1 signal?
You know, that's always something that's worth exploring, but, we can't answer that at this point, but, and certainly may involve a conversation with Caltrans as well.
Any other,
Mayor,
Mr. Cordero?
I have a lot of things I'd like to say, but I think I would really like to hear any speakers.
Okay, I just want to
before we
know
get
if
into that.
anyone wanted questions of Mr. Ng right now.
Not yet.
Okay, not yet, okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any written correspondence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we've received 2 written communications. The first being from the applicant, Ben Nickfarjam. He is requesting support for his project. He's also requesting waiver of all development fees for his project, and then recommends that the council consider waiving all development fees for projects in the downtown specific plan. And the second written communication we received was from David Dennis supporting the project and the possibility of the retail and jobs in the downtown corridor.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak in favor or in opposition of this item?
Yes, we have 6 in total, and I don't see any in opposition.
There's 7, Mr. Armenta. Okay. Dan Blau, followed by Glenn Morris, followed by Kathy Sharam, followed by Jeff Brubaker.
Thank you. I'm not really here to talk in opposition to the project, but I do have some significant concerns. It's just recently that I've gotten more involved with Chamber and with EDC and with the downtown, whatever the new committee is I just volunteered on. But I do have concerns that the parking is not being adequately addressed. The reality is, under your normal code, you'd be required to have 16 parking spaces just for the commercial, and then 60 plus for the residential. Typical residential is 2 spaces per unit plus a half space for guests. That's like 90 units. Now, I get the idea that in the downtown corridor, we're going to reduce the parking requirement because we think it's shared between commercial and non-commercial users, but to go from what would normally be 90-some units down to 12 seems to me to be absurd. One of the things that I know we're trying to do with the downtown core is to attract more restaurants, more retail, more concentrated uses. And I do know that in the past you've had merchants associations where you got together and created city parking lots and other parking arrangements to try and allow it to happen, but you can't do that and then put this 31-unit apartment complex in there and not provide parking. It's simply not going to work. I think you're going to strangle the downtown here. I mean, if you're talking about wanting to put more restaurants in that corridor, this kind of a project will kill that. There's no way a restaurant can open near here when you've got 30 apartment users. They're going to generate between 50 and 60 cars and parking in all the street areas and the parking lots that you have around there. Can't do it. I'm going to talk later about the traffic mitigation fees, and I'm going to lobby for the downtown to have even a reduced a reduced mitigation fee. But I can see where we could do a system where we do a parking mitigation fee for the downtown, to whereas I as a developer could come in and say, okay, I don't have to provide my parking, but let me pay you $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a parking space that I'm required, and you as a city or we as collectively build a parking structure that we can collectively use. That kind of makes sense. I mean, the reality is when I do a commercial project and I build a parking spot, it's about 400 square feet. By the time we do the parking spot and the access to get to it and the landscaping. It cost me around $12 a square foot for that space. It cost me about $4 or $5 a square foot to asphalt it, to landscape it, to do all the things I have to do for it. Allow me to pay that fee in lieu, where I don't have to put the parking in my space. That works out. And again, when you talk about shared between a residential user and an office user, makes sense. But we've got to have the space. You can't just say, we're not going to have a space there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blau. Glenn Morris, followed by Kathy Sharam, followed by Jeff Brubaker.
Evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to address you on this item. When I first got to town a couple of years ago, we were in the final stages of revising the downtown specific plan, and I was pleased to be able to work with staff on some of those final tweaks and to support it when the council adopted that plan. I think the proposal you have before you today is the natural result of the plan. We set out a plan and said we want to be different. We want a different solution in at least a portion of our community. Somebody took a look at it and said, let me try this. And I think I share some of the concern about the parking issues, but I think there are workarounds. I think your staff and the developer and the neighboring businesses can get together and figure out a solution. I would just strongly encourage us that as we move forward on this proposal, that we be very cognizant of the fact that this is the first, and that there are others who are watching what happens tonight. That how this project gets moved forward or sideways could have direct impact on when and if other proposals come forward. This is a critical corner for us. What's there today is not what anybody wants. Replacing it with a cleaned up version of what's there would be a shame as well. This is an opportunity for us to really make a difference in our downtown and to say to the rest of the community, you know, this isn't the solution for everyone. We don't expect everyone to live like this, but there are some who might want to, and we want to include them in the community. So we would encourage you to continue this project forward and allow the staff and the applicant to find a solution that works. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Sharam, followed by Jeff Brubaker.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Kathy Sherman. I'm a resident of Santa Maria. I'd like to comment in favor of the project. It makes good economic sense. Sorry. It will add 4,100 square feet of retail space and the jobs and revenue that accompany the businesses. Additionally, 31 apartments will be added to our much-needed housing supply. All of this will happen on a mere 0.3 acres of land that isn't sacrificed from open space or farm uses, land where the city is already shouldering the costs of streets and infrastructure. Revenue from this 0.3 acres will contribute to the ongoing costs of maintaining infrastructure in the downtown. It also moves our city one step closer to a vibrant downtown. And to sort of reiterate, I think what the previous speaker was saying, I think maybe the people that choose to live in these places aren't people that necessarily want to use a car or have a car. I think it's good to keep in mind that companies like Uber and Lyft, I think, are going to be more commonplace, and we won't have to deal with so many parking issues. As previously stated by Principal Planner Nada Zayer in her report to the Planning Commission, excuse me, quote, "This project meets the vision, intent, goals, and development standards of the downtown specific plan. The building orientation and design will be a great enhancement to the Main Street and Broadway intersection and would be influential in guiding the future physical form of downtown," end quote. I urge you to approve this permit. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Jeff Brubaker, followed by Alicia Perales, followed by Emily Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Jeff Brubaker from Santa Maria. I support the project and believe the council should approve the resolution. I agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation, and I agree with the previous speaker as well. This project accords with the downtown specific plan and does seem like a natural result of that positive planning process. I also believe it contributes to a vibrant downtown. It brings new residents to a location where they can walk to restaurants, Downtown Fridays, the park across the street, the library, City Hall right here, the community center, Seamus Park, and overall it brings new customers to the businesses on Main Street and Broadway and other streets. It brings new housing choices to community members and those looking to relocate here. It makes a lot of fiscal sense, as was described in the staff report. And I like the architecture. I think it fits well with the city and also will really do a lot to beautify that corner compared to the building that's there now. And then just finally, with regard to parking, I would just urge the council to envision a few different scenarios for potential tenants of these apartments with regard to their parking preferences. So, A, you might get some tenants who do not own a car, and they might enjoy living here. B, you might get some tenants that own a car but are okay with a more remote parking space. And C, you might get others who take a look at this housing option, feel that they need something that has more parking or parking right next to their door. They have a lot of other options that they can look at in the city of Santa Maria. So I think that this is a new kind of positive option for housing choices, and I think a lot of people will be happy living there, and I think it'll really contribute to the downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alicia Perales, followed by Emily Garcia, followed by Ernest Armenta.
Hello, I'm Alicia Perales. I've been born and raised in Santa Maria my whole life, and I love it here. I take a lot of pride living here and growing up here. I'm really excited about the downtown area and what the planners have been working tirelessly for years to revitalize our area and get new people in this community. So as a small business owner in Santa Maria, I really was excited when I saw this location and the design, because it's something that I would love to initially lease a building like that and have my own storefront. And even live above was even more exciting. I thought that would be so cool to live right above where I would have my own storefront. And like someone else said earlier, maybe the people who want to live there don't necessarily have cars, or they'll use other things to get around. And it's true. We have a different kind of generation coming up and taking charge, and I think we should consider that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Emily Garcia, followed by Ernest Armenta.
Good afternoon. I'm Emily. So I just came here today. This is actually my first meeting, and I just thought it was really important for me to be here because stuff like this really excites me, and I think it's projects that are so different to anything else than other places in Santa Maria. So I know that there's new developments on the other side of town, but I feel like this is really good for the downtown, and it definitely attracts me back to looking this way. And so I would personally be interested in living in a place like that, just because the walkability and the accessibility to entertainment, and it, like everybody said before, like it makes a vibrant downtown, and I think it would be a good development to have in Santa Maria. So,
Thank you and welcome, and come again. Ernest Armenta.
I'm Ernest Stephen Armenta. When I hear the proposal, Mr. Boyson, I can already tell that the developer, I don't mind, I'm in favor of anybody trying to invest and make a buck and actually purchase that property. But I can see already that we, the taxpayers, are going to end up subsidizing this parking. We have a downtown specific plan. Either you put in the parking or you don't get your project approved, or you remove the residential units. There's no free passes here no longer. We pay dearly for that Santa Maria parking lot. So yeah, we pay dearly annually. So that means that developer is going to give more. That property is going to give way more than $6,000 a year. He's going to pay up front the full cost. So currently, right now, we have a vibrant downtown. See, many people don't go shop and walk all those little stores right there on Main Street or on Broadway. Many of you don't. But we do. Most of us community, we go down there and we get great deals. There's restaurants there's furniture stores, there's clothing stores. It's a vibrant downtown because many people just don't go down there. And I'm opposed to this project because I remember when the staff went on the news and says, we want downtown to be like Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo. Well, I can't say the words what I feel about Santa Barbara, the city of Santa Barbara, or San Luis Obispo, but we definitely ain't going down that road. We're city of Santa Maria. We're different from them. The simple truth is those city of Santa Barbara and the city of Santa, they think they're better than us, Mr. Boyson. They think they're on a higher class than us. Well, let me put it this way. This developer is going to come in, he's going to put in parking spaces, period. And unless you guys are just going to tinker with the downtown Pacific plan and give them a little pass and a little break and let them use the downtown parking. So I'm opposed to this until he comes back with a better project, or either remove the residential units or provide parking, because we're not going to subsidize them. Thank you very much, Mr. Boyson.
Thank you. Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for discussion or a motion.
Is the developer going to get to see?
Oh. I didn't know. I thought you said he was out of the country.
It's his architect.
The architect, oh, okay. I did not have any requests to speak for you, so I didn't know.
I didn't, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I didn't know
no,
that
it's
I have
fine.
to. I'm good evening. First, I'm sorry, my client, Mr. Nick Farjum, could not be here. He has some family emergency. He had to leave the country. I'm Alex Cuevas. I'm representing the architectural and the engineering firm. I think the only issue that we have here, is the parking. The architecture of the building, I'm very proud of. I work with NETA. It's a beautiful building. The whole idea the planning department had about the downtown and friendly walking pedestrian is excellent. You see this in many, many other cities. People are not used to this kind of stuff. That is the problem. The idea of you provide one apartment, you have parking. People are not the same anymore. People don't just have car, 2, 3, 4 cars. Some people use bicycles, and people like to walk. Not having a parking space, if I'm going to rent a space, it's going to be my decision if I rent a space without the parking right under the building. This is different. It's not your typical building with parking. We are providing the 12 parking stalls for the retail building. We have plenty of parking on the street. We have plenty of parking behind us, across, everywhere. So I don't see the issue of the parking. I understand 1 or 2 people are kind of not opposed, but they're creating more than it is. You come and rent the apartment, you're going to have a choice. We're not going to say, here's the apartment and you have 2 parking stalls, and later, no, you don't have any parking stalls. It's going to be up front. There's no parking stalls. They are located across the street. Would you like the apartment? And they're very small units, so most of them are going to be for singles or maybe a couple, young couple starting a family, and then they're going to move on because the apartment is getting too small. This is different. So I don't know if you have any questions for me related to the architecture of the building or parking or how we came up with this.
Any questions?
I do, Mayor.
Yes, Mr.
You said
Cordero.
there's parking in the rear?
Yes, so there's parking lots around us that can be used for the.
You said there was parking in the rear of, I took your comment as there was parking in the rear of the complex that's being proposed.
That is, we have 12 parking stalls right behind in the rear of the retail space. Those are allocated for the retail space.
Okay, so you're not referring to parking past the alley
No,
or
not
anything like
past
that?
the alley.
Okay.
The past the alley are the city parking that we can use.
Well, there's other parking that are just past the alley that's owned by other people in the area that people could park in, but they shouldn't park in.
Yeah, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're
You're
talking about
the
parking that
city
belongs
parking
to the
lots.
city.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Moats?
Yeah, I'd like to ask about the setback between the building and the other commercial properties on West Main Street. Are you going to have the 3-foot or 4-foot setback, or are you going to bring it right up against the other properties?
No, we work for a long time with the fire department. We have many meetings with the fire department, and we were trying to have, the setback is 5 feet, to answer your question. And the reason why I got those windows, because escape, and they wanted to make sure that they can get a ladder through that area in order to save people as anything goes wrong. The building is going to be fully sprinklered. We have the access stairs and elevator. We are complying with all the requirements from the code.
And that'll be paved back there?
Yes.
Okay.
No, between our property and the neighbor's property, that's going to be used for retention, water quality control.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Boyce and Ms. Waterfield, any questions? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I'll close the public hearing, bring the item back to council for discussion or motion. You know, I have a question, Mr. Ng. In the plan, it's entry both on Broadway and on Main Street to the property?
There's a driveway access off of Main Street, and there's one access off of the alley.
So, okay, so you're off Broadway into the alley.
Off Broadway into the alley, and then from the alley into the drive aisle, under the building.
Okay, so that's not going to be angle parking, then it's going to be...
It's 90-degree parking
90
with a standard drive aisle.
Okay, Mr. Boyce?
Could you show us the overhead of the property so we could see where the parking is in the city parking lot? So the city parking lot is, could you define that, the one that is immediately adjacent to the project site?
It's actually across from Lincoln.
This is the city lot right here.
The other spaces that are nearest to the project site would be street parking. So if I were to provide some further explanation about the proposed building and the parking, if the site was larger, staff would have asked for more parking. But it's a small site, and given the small site and given the desire for retail storefronts on the floor, because if we were to say, I'm just going to go back to this site plan here. So the site plan on the left, where you see the brown shaded area for retail, and you see the drive aisle, and you see the parking spaces. If we were to put in more parking, we would have to wipe out that retail area. But we felt that there was a strong need to have something on the floor, something on the ground, so that there's that interaction between the business and street activity. If we were to wipe that out and replace it with parking, that would take away that dynamic. and there's a need for that continuity between North China and other businesses along the street, and for that to continue into the corner. And so that's what, if we had a larger site, we would ask for more parking. But because of the dimensions, this is what we have, and we're relying on parking in the area. As far as the apartment units are concerned, we felt that this was a critical corner. And being a critical corner, the heart of the city, Main and Broadway, we felt that it was important to have a nice presence, a high-quality presence. And the applicant has come and is proposing a building that is of high quality. So there is a reliance on nearby areas for parking, but we adequately thought through it and talked about it. And if we still need to, massage it and explore other options, we would. But I just wanted to provide that explanation and the importance of having that ground floor retail in the storefronts.
Mr. Ng?
Ms. Waterfield?
Are you saying that you're going to be providing street parking all the way, on Broadway, all the way to Main Street? Right now, there isn't street, it stops at North China Restaurant. So you're
Right.
saying there's going to be street parking all the way up to Main Street?
No. What I'm saying is that, all the options are on the table if there's a need to discuss parking management. And, we understand that Michelson and North China is adjacent, and we want to make sure that this proposal doesn't negatively impact his operations.
Okay.
And
And I get everything that you're talking about. I think this project is a great concept for what the downtown specific plan is all about. But the issue I have is the parking, because even with the downtown specific plan requirement, the equation you use, we still need 38 required parking spaces there. And in our public comment, we had two people come before us talking about parking issues at other places, where you had the Transit Center and then the Hancock Terrace. And those, everything was equated into those projects. This is Santa Maria, and Santa Maria, everyone has vehicles. I think this is a beautiful project, I do. But we've got to put parking, because people in Santa Maria will park closest to their location, and they probably won't use the Town Center Mall parking lot, is what I am thinking. And a project like this usually works so well when you do have a vibrant downtown. And I think what we need to discuss is, do we put the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart? Because in other places where a person parks, they will walk by a grocery store, they'll walk by a drugstore, they'll walk by restaurants, they'll grab and pick up things on the way going home. And so it's just one of those situations. So while I love the concept of what is going on here, I just truly believe we have to provide the parking in the downtown area, because if not, it's going to be a detriment to the other businesses who will look at what's going on. And I understand what Mr. Blau had indicated, it would be a killer unless, we repurpose something around that area. But that is my concern, is parking. Unless you take one of those floors and make it a parking structure on top.
It's a tremendous challenge.
Or on the bottom, take that whole bottom floor and make it a parking underneath parking with, commercial on Second and then apartments 2 and 4. But it has to be, in my opinion, and that's my own personal opinion, that we've got to have the parking, because Santa Maria does have a parking issue. We even have them in neighborhoods all across the city.
Dr. Moats?
Oh, all right. Well, I think what's sitting on that corner right now is urban blight. And I think that if we don't approve this project, we will continue to have urban blight there indefinitely. Everything about this project is good, except the parking. We're all in agreement with that. The Town Center Mall East parking lot is grossly underutilized. I just happened to drive there this morning, and there was virtually no assemblage of any cars in there. So who are going to be moving into these apartments? I mean, these people, when they sign their contract to move into the apartment, are going to be told they don't have a parking spot. So it seems to me that a lot of the risk in this falls on the developer. Because, if people want to have a car and they're not going to get a parking spot, well, then they got to go someplace else. I think the developer ought to tell them, hey, if you want to park here and you got a car, there's the Town Center Mall parking lot to the east. You go park there. Now, I'm in favor of walking. I've got a Fitbit, and I like to get my 10,000 steps in every day. I think a little walk from the Town Center Mall east to your apartment and back is probably a good thing. It'll improve their health.
Mr. Cordero.
Well, I tend to align myself more with what Councilwoman Warfield said. My feeling is that this is going to create a terrible, terrible problem. I don't care what your contract says with the rental agreement. I don't care how it's written. It could be written by the best attorney in the country. The people that live in those apartments have every legal right in the world to park their cars in any of the spaces along Main and Broadway. We can't stop them. The city can't stop them. It's put in here that, as I read this thing, that if the project is built out and it does develop a problem with the parking, we'll institute the 2-hour parking ordinance. Well, that's not going to stop them. These people are not stupid. I mean, I dealt with these kinds of things all the time in my law enforcement career. Parking, I don't know if it still is, but parking was one of our #1 complaints. And we mentioned the two. Ms. Waterfield mentioned the two tonight. I received one that I turned over to Jason Stillwell a couple of weeks ago on a residential property on the northeast side of town. Parking is a big issue. These people are going to park where they can, and I don't care what anybody says about, well, you kind of signed a contract that says you wouldn't, but you can't hold their feet to the fire on that. They're going to do everything they can do in order to keep that spot. If they, and I believe this is to what was being alluded to earlier by one of the speakers, Mr. Blau, is that if somebody comes downstairs and they say, I just got off work and it's 8 o'clock in the morning, they work the graveyard shift, there's a parking right there in front of I don't know what stores there now, the old Melby's jewelry place, they can park there all day. That means that gentleman that runs that facility is not going to have customers coming in there and being able to park in front of his store and run in and get something. I drove by and I counted I think 13 different businesses in the area that would be using those spaces. And they all kind of appear to be businesses that you would dash in there, pick something up, and then you're gone. And so that parking place in front of their store could be used 15, 20, 30 times a day or more. But if myself as a tenant were living in there and I parked my car there in the morning, it can't be used at all. What's going to happen to these people when somebody can't move their car? Are they subject to the 72-hour time limit? Somebody is ill, accident, out of town, they got to pay to have their car put someplace, or do we issue now a special permit so they don't get their car towed off? What happens during those months of the year where there is no parking in the Town Center Mall? Dr. Moat says he drove through there and didn't see any cars at all. Do that around December 5th. And the nearest parking in one of those facilities could be clear over next to Cook and Miller. You're not going to walk that way. It is going to create a problem that is not going to go away. So I like Ms. Waterfield. I like the project. I should tell you that I accidentally saw the artist rendition of the project several months ago. I mistakenly attended a meeting I was mistakenly invited to a meeting, and this project was brought to my attention, and I liked it then. And I thought, well, who in their right mind would put a big, beautiful building like this right at Main and Broadway and take away that nice little old gas station thing? As a joke, of course. And they said that was our point exactly. So the idea is great. The structure is fantastic. But I think it's foolish of us to approve something that all of us can agree here we already have a problem with. I don't believe this is if it develops into a problem, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a drain on the police department. They're going to get called down here. Well, this person's been down here for 4 hours, so the 2-hour thing is going to go in. This person's been here for 3 hours and there's still no citation. It's going to create a problem. Until the parking thing is resolved before the project is approved, I don't believe we should approve it. I think that the project has the potential of setting the mark, if you will, and bringing a lot of money to our community in the downtown area. But should we really approve something that, because it might influence other construction, knowing that we're going to damage the people that are there scratching out a living in their stores? I don't think we should. I think that's unjust to them. My wife and I eat regularly at the North China restaurant. And I know in my heart that if I drove around the block a couple of times and couldn't find a parking, I'd go elsewhere. I'd go to another restaurant and change my mind. I think that's just me. I can't speak for anybody else up here or any of the people in the audience or any of the listening public. But I would not drive around that block a couple of dozen times waiting to get a parking place, if I'm lucky, and then go into the restaurant. I just don't think I would do it. And I don't think very many people would do it. I don't think the people are going to park over in the parking lots either. I think that they're going to try their darndest to figure out a way not to. In the perfect world, it says here that the parking will be available to the commercial businesses in the daytime and available to the residents at night. Well, whatever decides daytime and nighttime is not magically going to come and all of a sudden, poof, all the cars that are there disappear. They're going to be there. Someone's having to stay over and do their books. You mentioned the 12 parking places. Some of those parking places are going to be designated as handicapped, wouldn't you think? So they're going to be designated, so it's really not 12 parking places. It might be where 12 cars can park, but if you don't have any handicap placards in there, whatever you require, the 2 or 3 or whatever it is, are going to be unutilized waiting for deserved handicapped people to come in and use them. So we're cutting it down even more. It's even worse than we originally thought. So I think it would be a serious mistake to do this. Then if we do this, if we approve this project, what are we saying to the people? Well, come on down. And then when they want their parking things relieved, what are we creating? So I think it just has too many negatives for me, and they all center around the parking. I know that this gentleman, I applaud Ben for his work in thinking outside of the box and doing these things. But I read a letter that he wrote that said he had no intention on doing this when he purchased that property. He had intentions on putting something else together, other small business, until he started talking to people and developed the insight to, well, let's put this up. So this is a residential project at Main and Broadway. I don't think it belongs there. And now you can argue with me, or other people can argue and say, well, yeah, but you have the high-rise right across the street that's residential, but they have their own parking. I don't remember in 36 years of going to a parking problem at the high-rise since it's been there. It hasn't been there 36 years. While I was there, but I don't believe that they have the same issue. And what we're doing is we're putting basically a residential structure at Main and Broadway. We're switching it. This is a commercial area. This is what we want for commercial. If we switch that back the other way and they put a 7-Eleven store or a Jack in the Box or a Denny's restaurant next to your house, I don't think you'd like that. And I don't think any of us would like that. So I think until the problem is resolved, and I don't see how it can be with the .03 acres to provide enough parking. If we were shaving off 1 or 2 or maybe even 5 parking places from that, I could probably learn to live with that. But it'll be a nightmare. And it won't go away until that property is redone and the need for parking is no longer there. As long as we're going to have the need for parking, it will be a problem in this community to deal with. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Boyce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, you're going to find out why you paid the big bucks, because you're going to have to make the deciding vote on this. I strongly support and agree with Dr. Moats on this. This is a project that needs to happen in our downtown area. We need this project. We need to put this seed on our true gateway property right there at Broadway in Maine. Civilization has changed, whether, all of us that are approaching, most of us have the ability, most of us.
What are you trying to say delicately?
Most of us qualify for Medicare. We are not the type of folks that are going to be utilizing probably this type of a residential facility. But the millennials have changed. I mean, Dr. Moats likes to walk. I have my Uber app, and that's what the folks that live in an environment like this will do. They will walk. They'll use their Uber app. They will use their bicycles, whatever. My daughter gets 95% of her groceries from Amazon.com. It's delivered to her front door. She orders it the night before. It's delivered to her front door by 4 o'clock the next day. Carrying groceries, from the town center west or town center east is not going to be an issue for the folks that are renting these apartments. And I also commend the developer for putting his money on the line on here. He's the one that's going to suffer if this is not a successful project. These folks will find a place to park. They will, and there is parking that is available. Now, if they have to park at Cook and Miller and Uber from Cook and Miller to the apartment, they'll do that. So I am in full support of this project as it stands. I realize that, we're going to have to build this and find out what the impacts are after we build it. And we may be changing going forward with some of the other projects that are come before us. But for now, we need this project in Santa Maria. So I am in full support and
Thank you, Mr.
ready to
Boyce.
make a motion.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Cordero.
I'm not against the project itself. I think the project is great, and I think I said that. I just think that we should mitigate the known problem before we build the project. Because once you've built it, there's no stepping back. It's there. It's not going to go away.
It's not like Monopoly. You can't pick
You
the
can't
house
pick
up
your
off
house
a
up and put it
boardwalk.
back in the
Right.
box.
Mr. Eng, let me ask you a question. How many handicap parking places are going to be required there?
2.
2. Okay. Okay. I like the project, too. I think it looks great, and I think it's important to start with something downtown. But this brought to my mind this past Sunday when I went to church, and I park way at the very back, so I have longer to walk. And here comes this young girl in a brand new red BMW, millennial, and she doesn't want to go park back where I park. She has to park so close, and she parks in the fire lane. And that's unlawful. But I think that's part of the mentality. You're breaking the law and you're going into church, and I thought that was very, very interesting. And I couldn't even give her a ticket. But people are going to be parking right as close as they possibly can. Another question, Mr. Engel, all the businesses there along Main Street and Broadway, do they have designated parking in the back of their businesses?
They do not. There's a parking lot behind North China, but I believe that's property that belongs to Michael's son.
Okay, so you may not know that, but I know that when I have rented property before, commercial property there, you have so many, you are told you can't park in front of your business, that you have to park someplace else. So I didn't know if they had designated spots for loading or unloading or anything back there. So you don't know if they do or not?
I don't know.
Okay, and then we just heard the gentleman talk about Hancock Terrace. We were guaranteed that there would be enough, we're always guaranteed there's going to be enough parking. And guess what? I don't know why we were surprised. A few weeks ago, we were asked to, there was not enough parking for the CHC that wanted to go in on Blosser, and we did not allow that because of the parking. And that parking that the church was going to allow is even closer than this. So parking is an issue. And we hear it all the time. We hear it in the residential areas that there's cars on the street because we have too many people living in one house. So let me ask you, these are going to be market rate apartments, correct?
That's my understanding.
Do you know what that market rate amount is?
That may be a question for the applicant or applicant's representative.
Do you know?
I really don't know much about it except for the conversations that I had with Ben. Could you ask the question again, please?
I was wondering, it's market rate apartments, so I didn't know what that amount was going to be, just ballpark figure.
The cost of monthly fees of the apartment?
For renting.
It's going to be about $900 to $1,100.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
those are
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Cordero?
And on top of that, Ben is asking us to waive all his mitigation fees.
Oh, that's right. He
Yeah,
wants us to-
everything, I got a letter on it, I don't know whether everybody else did or not, but all the mitigation fees are to be waived. If ever there was a problem with a project, we should charge the mitigation fees. It would be something like this, where we know there's going to be post-building problems. And I don't know, I love the project. I think it's great. It's outstanding cosmetically for our community, no doubt about it. But to build something with problems makes a mistake to me.
Madam Mayor
Yes.
and City Council members, would there be a solution if we could take it, give it back to community development and have them fix the parking situation, or is that just a no-go?
Actually, that would be a question for Ben, but for what I know, the building as it is today is very expensive. So eliminating some of the uses, the bottom portion, for example, in order to create more parking stalls for the apartment complex, it will not, financially it will not work. If we were going to use underground parking in order to make the project work, also it will not be financially possible. Not the problem, how can I use it without saying something? You build this building in any area, and you ask me a question, how much would you be able to rent the spaces, retail, apartments? It's a fixed number. It depends on the area the building is built. But it costs the same everywhere else. So he can take his money and invest it someplace else. You can have the same building and the return is going to be greater. Ben has a few buildings here in this area. He loves Santa Maria. He spends more time here at the hotel than at his own house. I know him for like 20-something years. So he's very excited about the project. And I cannot speak on his behalf as far as saying, no, take it or leave it kind of thing. But I would be surprised if he's going to continue with the project if we have to reduce either the apartment, the number of the apartments, or the retail space. The reason why he was asking for the mitigation fees and all that in reduction, as it is today, is we have to deal with Caltrans. Besides of the permitting process that we have with the city, we already submitted the plans. We try to be ahead of the game because we know the Caltrans takes a couple of years to answer even an email. So we're already working with Caltrans. We're preparing the construction document. As a matter of fact, me as the architectural office engineering, we are in the middle. We're almost 50% done with the construction documents for this building. He took the risk. He paid us, he paid my consultants. It would be a shame. I really think I lose a project, win some, that's not my point. My point is that this is different. I think we're not looking outside of the box. This is a different type of building. This is a different, I'm getting older too, so it's not, I can't speak, but my daughter, says things to me like that, you're getting old, you're a foreigner, on top of that, you're old. They think different. The new generations, they think different. They don't think like we do. And this is not meant for, it's not a senior citizen apartment. This is for a new generation. It's different.
And we understand that. We understand this is completely different. This is something that the downtown specific plan had initially wanted, but we do have the parking situation that's a reality. Whether you think different or whatever, they all have vehicles, and it's all going to create a problem. And we understand, just as Councilman Cordero had so eloquently explained, the parking situation in Santa Maria. My question is, and this is to the City Council, and I don't know if this is a motion or not, but if we just, since Mr. Ben is not here, if we send it back to the Community Development Department, ask them to work with Ben in creating more parking spaces, then it's his decision whether he wants to go forward or not, instead of us saying it's a no-go.
Okay, it's not, you guys voted?
It's still a living document.
The way I see it is 2-2, you have the last. But let me ask something. You mentioned everybody has cars. I have a lot of friends that don't have cars. They don't want to pay the insurance, they have Uber, they have Lyft. It's a different generation. Not nobody, a lot of people decided cars, they're useless. I can get faster to where I'm going. I don't have to worry about parking. I don't have to pay parking fees. I don't have to pay insurance. I don't have to pay gas. I live in a nice apartment. A different style. It's different. When I say different, and you bring up the parking, and that's the reason why I'm saying it's different, because the parking doesn't count here. Even though it's a number 2 per apartment, 3 ratios of this, ratios of that, it doesn't apply. It's different, because that's the people that we're looking for. We're not looking for people that have 2-3 cars because they can't live there. We're looking for people that are going to say, I'll rent the apartment with the understanding there is no parking. I'll walk. I work in bank downtown, whatever. That was the idea behind this.
Absolutely, and we all understand that. We all completely understand it. So, with that, if you want to make it...
Mr. Ng, what about, do you want Mr. Ng to respond to your question?
Yes.
Well, we've heard parking concerns, and I think instead of debating whether people would drive or not drive, let's assume that people will drive. Let's assume that people will park and that there is a parking demand. But what I would say is that this is a situation in which the parking demand would influence the building form. If we were to impose traditional parking requirements, this would never come to fruition. The existing structure on this site conforms to all existing zoning laws. And if we were to impose traditional parking requirements, you would likely see a product that's similar to what's on the ground today. So that's just for consideration. The dimensions of the site is a constraint. It's difficult to, say, put in underground parking or multi-layer parking just because the dimensions are very small. If this was a larger site, we would ask for it.
Absolutely, but we're still going through the requirements that's in the downtown specific plan.
Yes.
And so we're working with that equation that's there. So, which requires 38, which is still less than what, what we're at. What is needed.
Right.
But maybe, I don't know if we're willing to reduce 38 to something else. I don't know.
Right, so there's 2 ways to do it. Either you reduce the square footage of the use to the point where it doesn't require as many parking. So instead of 31 apartments and 3 commercial units, you reduce that to the point of something that's much smaller and would require fewer parking spaces.
Well, of course, that's up to him to do and not for us to decide, but Dr. Moats.
Mr. Ing, I just wanted to get one thing straight, and I thought it was very perceptive what you said. We've got two choices. This is one choice. The second choice is we're going to have a one-story commercial building on about the same square footage we have right now on that lot. Is that what our two choices are, as you see it?
I mean, there are probably some options in between. However, again, this is a small site. It happens to be on a critical corner. And so it's a very unique situation. I would say if this was located somewhere else and it's a much larger site, I think we would move forward with a recommendation and with a full, to meet the full extent of our parking requirements. But this was a unique situation. It was a critical corner, and there was a desire to have a presence at this corner. And so, but I think the parking demand and problem, I think it's very real. And if there was a way to take care of both, to have both the form and to have enough parking, I think that would be a win-win. And that's a challenge.
That brings up a second question. Councilman Cordero was concerned that this would be setting a precedent for other people, developers moving into this area to give us fewer than the recommended number of parking spots. Yet you're telling me because of the uniqueness and smallness of this lot and its strategic location at the four corners, that if somebody came along with a bigger, better place to build somewhere else, we'd still make them conform to the downtown specific plan.
Yes.
This is a real exception here that we're carving out.
It is.
And it's not
the
to be
dimensions of the
generalized.
site that makes it very difficult.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Mr. Cordero.
I'm sorry, sir, I apologize. I missed your name.
Alex Cuevas.
Okay, Alex.
Cuevas.
I have a question for you to take to Ben. In his own letter to us, to all of us, he said, when I first bought this property, putting this facility in it was nowhere in his mind. I hate to lose him as a local investor. I would hate to lose him as an entrepreneur in our community. Obviously, he's a good one. I'd like to know what his original thought was for buying the property, and maybe go back to that. I don't know why he bought it. I don't know what he paid for it or any of those things. But he purchased it, according to what he wrote. He purchased it, and then, after the purchase, developed this idea. I don't know what his idea was before, but perhaps that's a better one to consider.
I don't know exactly what the idea is, but again, I know Ben for about 20 years, like I said before. What I think it happened is he got an idea putting a fast food, just for conversation's sake, let's put a fast food restaurant there. And then we found out about the mitigation fees and this and all that, Caltrans, encroachment permits, the architectural engineering firms, fees and all that. And that whole number started growing and growing and growing. So the only way to justify his investment was to develop something else. So when we met with planning and we talked about the downtown, pedestrian friendly and all that, then we said, okay, beautiful. We're going to have a beautiful apartment complex with retail on the bottom. That's the reason, I imagine that's what happened.
Okay. Well, I hope you'll ask him the question for us all, because obviously he had some other thoughts when he purchased it, according to what he himself wrote. And just by everything that's said here, even Mr. Ng said that if this were in another location, we would demand more parking.
That is
well,
true.
It's not in another location.
But
it's
we're
at this
not.
location.
We're downtown, and it's a pedestrian friendly.
The footprint you're trying to put in there requires more parking. That's just the way it is.
The architectural firm that I have in an engineering firm, I can tell you right now, if we were going to do something there, if Ben comes to me and says, Alex, draw something and let me know what is the square footage of the building based on the ratio of parking, probably we can put an 1,000 square foot building. That's probably the same size of the building that you have there, max 1,400. It just doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think you're right. And different from you, I don't know anybody in my circle of friends that doesn't have at least one car, if not 3. So we live in different worlds, you know. So they're going to, people in Santa Maria have cars. You know, even the new younger people, you know, they don't get to go to Costco on a bicycle. You know, somewhere or another they've got a car, you know. So I wish you luck with the project. I wish you luck with working out the problem. I wish that I could come on board with this, but I just can't, sir. Just can't.
So the question to me is, do I want you to vote, or do I want to continue this in order to work with planning and come up with something?
Right,
Okay.
yes.
Could you give me a couple minutes? I'm going to text Ben.
Sure.
I know I can do that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
How much time do you need, Mr. Cuevas? Oh, okay, fine.
Madam Mayor, if we vote this down, do we still have the option of referring it back to the Community Development Department, or?
If we continue it, we do. If we vote it down, then how long does it go? Is it 6 months before it can be brought up again?
I believe it's 2 years.
Oh, 2 years, okay.
Oh,
Okay, I am, in the meantime, while Mr. Cuevas is working on that, I'm going to go to item number 6 on our agenda. Madam Clerk, could you please read the 6, yeah.
You mean 5?
I'm at 6.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
You're just
5 is going to take us a long time.
The City Council will consider adopting an interim urgency ordinance to oppose a temporary moratorium on the issuance of building permits for accessory dwelling units.
Staff report is being made by our Assistant City Attorney, Mr. Cinco.
Mayor Patino, members of the City Council. The legislature first passed a law concerning second units, also known as granny units, back in 1993. But at that time allowed cities and counties to prohibit them if the legislative body made a finding that they would have adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare, which the City Council did. So second units have been prohibited in the city ever since. In the last 10 years or so, the legislature passed another law that provided that any local jurisdiction that permitted second units, either on a ministerial basis or by discretionary permit, had to make them be permitted on a ministerial basis. This has changed. The state legislature this year, or last year actually, effective this year, passed 2 bills that the governor signed that now require all cities and counties to approve building permits on a ministerial basis for accessory dwelling units. That's the new name for what we used to call second units or granny units. They have to be permitted on every residentially zoned parcel that has an existing single-family dwelling, or actually under the new amendments, which were just passed a couple weeks ago, a vacant lot with a proposed single-family dwelling. This law does allow a city to adopt a local ordinance concerning the processing of these permits, but has a very tight limitation on what is allowed. Tonight, we are asking you to adopt an urgency ordinance to establish a temporary moratorium on the issuance of building permits related to accessory dwelling units, to allow staff to complete its work in preparing a local ordinance that would govern the processing of permits for accessory dwelling units. To adopt it, you'll need a 4/5 vote of the council, and if you do adopt it, it will take effect immediately. Planning has been in the process of working out an ordinance, and because of the recent amendments, we have to go back a little bit to the drawing board and make sure that it complies with the recent cleanup legislation that was just passed last couple weeks. Staff had originally targeted bringing an ordinance to you for consideration in December, and has been playing a version of Beat the Clock. It took a while for applications to come in. Staff is working on the ordinance, but staff has essentially run out of time because there are a number of pending building permit applications for accessory dwelling units that are near the point of being ready to be issued.
Excuse me, Mr.
Sir.
Cinco. Ms. Waterfield has a question.
What kind of problems are we having with these dwelling units?
Well, we don't have any problems at the moment because they're not allowed.
Okay, so what kind of problems do you foresee then, that you have to have an urgency to stop everything in its track?
The urgency is there's one particular requirement that staff feels very strongly that is allowed by the state legislation that cities can impose, and that's an owner occupancy requirement. See, to allow an accessory or a single-family dwelling to add an accessory unit and then have the owner live elsewhere and rent both of them out, essentially, in staff's opinion, creates an R2 lot in an R1 neighborhood. That is the danger that staff sees. It's going to lead to a decline in the character of an R1 single-family neighborhood.
That's what I needed to know.
Okay. We are, as I said, we're not going to be able to stop these as we have since 1983, but we can essentially get enough time to finish the ordinance in another month or two, and that would be one of the requirements of the ordinance. There'll be some other ones, technical, parking, some building standards and whatnot. That doesn't need to be discussed right now. The staff is just really concerned that if we issue 6 or 8, 7, maybe 10 permits, maybe 12 before we are able to complete the ordinance, they could be rented out and owner-occupied or not owner-occupied. We think owner occupancy is essential to the success of this ordinance.
So with the ones that are already built on properties, will they be grandfathered in and this new bill won't affect them?
Well, a second dwelling is not allowed right now on any residential lot. I know that they're out there.
Yeah.
If we come across them, we will be able to say, no, you need to legalize that and follow the ordinance, or tear out the sink and the kitchen and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They will have a path to legalization. I guess that's a silver lining, because right now if somebody buys a house, there's a second unit there, they don't know, they need it for the income to pay their mortgage. Somebody complains about it, maybe a tenant that's not happy, and then code compliance comes in and makes them tear it out, and then they're dispossessed, they lose the house. This would be at least a way for them to legalize that and allow that clean, safe, more affordable housing.
Okay, or that creates too much parking.
Well, that's another thing. We aren't going to really be able to allow, it's ironic, we're not going to really be able to impose very much in the way of parking requirements. We're just going to have to basically allow these. And the people could have 7 cars and we can't do anything about it. It is going to have an impact in neighborhoods no matter what we do, but that's one reason why we want to draft an ordinance to protect the character of our R1 neighborhoods to the extent possible. And we can't do that, in our opinion, under the state laws that govern this, because this law was written for places like San Francisco and San Jose, where there's a huge housing crisis, and they decided that one size fits all, and towns like Santa Maria that have nothing in common with the Bay Area have to do the same solution, which isn't really appropriate. But we're going to try to make the best of it, but we need some time to complete the ordinance, and we don't want these permits being issued and thus grandfathered and allowed to be essentially favored R2 lots in an R1 zone. So I think that's about it. The only thing I would add is if you adopted, the urgency ordinance will automatically expire in 45 days. I'm not sure we'll be able to get an ordinance before you in that time. It'll be close, but if we can't, we will come for an extension, and then soon after that, the ordinance should be ready for your consideration. It has to go to the Planning Commission first as well. That's the end of my report.
Mr. Boyson?
Why haven't we been ahead of this curve? I mean, we've known this. This was passed in, I think it became effective January 1st. Is that right?
Yes, it did.
And I mean, we've just...
Well, with respect, this is a very lean and mean city, and we did have some shortages in the planning department. Also, there was some confusion even in the professional circles, the League of California Cities, in terms of trying to understand this is kind of a radical piece of legislation. So it did take some time, and I'll let Mr. Ng explain the delays in the community development department, but it's definitely a problem with staffing. We weren't able to make this a top priority, and like I said, there wasn't applications coming in, so,
Well,
we lost our planning division manager during the time that this was started.
And I do want to look forward, I don't want to look back on this one, but I just want to make sure that we just don't all of a sudden extend this for 45 days, and then all of a sudden we're going to extend it for another 10 months and 15 days as allowed, subsequently blah, 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 and extend the ordinance for another year. This is critical. I mean, you say we don't have a housing shortage. I'm in the trenches every day. We have a definite housing shortage in the city of Santa Maria, and residential second units will go a long way towards helping that. I agree with you. One of them needs to be owner-occupied, but for me to be able to have a unit that my parents can live in or my child could live in or whatever, this will be a boon to our housing stock in Santa Maria. So I want to put the importance on this effort that it deserves.
I never said we had a housing, we didn't have a housing shortage. I know there's a lack of affordable housing. I was more concerned about the changing the character of residential neighborhoods. But I believe Mr. Ng can explain better about the timetable, but I just talked to him recently, and he's very comfortable with the December timeframe, moving the final ordinance for your consideration in December. So this moratorium should be able to be lifted the middle of January.
Oh, that'd be, okay.
Mr. Stanko, let me ask you something. So that means that we could probably see more garage conversions?
Absolutely. And we will be requiring, at least we'll be proposing that the parking be replaced. Don't have to, but the ordinance, the state law does allow us to require replacement parking. But we've made a decision not to recommend that it be replaced with covered parking. We think that it just makes more sense to allow people, if they're going to convert their garages, to allow parking in any configuration that's possible on the lot. That's something you can debate when we bring the ordinance forward, but that's the kind of issues we've been grappling with, trying to interpret the effects, and it's difficult because we've been writing this saying, well, we don't really know what is going to come up. Every time we looked at it, another scenario popped up, and we had to account for it and address it.
Are we going to be able to charge mitigation fees on these second units?
We are going to be able to charge growth mitigation fees, yes, but not for sewer connection and
Okay,
capacity.
so right now, say for a median home, what are the fees that are charged to build, say, one house?
I would have to refer that to Mr. Khan, but I think we're going to use the same formula. The law requires that we can charge growth mitigation fees, but since an accessory dwelling unit is so much smaller than a house, the fee should be also smaller than a house. We charge by the square foot, so by default, it's going to be smaller because the square footage isn't as big as a house.
Before you go on, I just want to ask this one question. Is this going to be a detached dwelling unit?
It can be detached or attached.
Attached meaning you can convert your garage
Detached, you can convert your shed or your tiny home if you have one, your accessory dwelling, your guest house, whatever. Attached, you can convert a bedroom, and the only condition would be you'd have to have outside access. It would have to be a separate unit. And there's going to be some fire code and building code requirements associated with it. So it's not going to be entirely cheap to do it, but it will be possible.
Mr. Khan, okay, and I think you probably have mentioned it before, the fees to build, say, a median home today?
Madam Mayor, council members, the current fee to build a single-family home in Santa Maria is approximately $25,000 for the
Okay.
growth mitigation program.
Okay, and I know people come here and constantly say we don't have affordable housing, and a lot of these fees are imposed not just by us, but by the state. So now we have the long arm of the state coming in saying, you have to do this.
That's true.
Okay, that's my political statement. Did you have a question, Mr. Cordero?
Nope.
Okay. And it's going to change the whole character of anyone's neighborhood.
We are hopeful that the ordinance that we craft will mitigate some of those concerns.
And people aren't going to lie, right? Okay.
Well, I'd like to see it without being able to convert their garages. That is just going to be crazy.
It's not possible.
That's
State
not
law
possible.
clearly
Because the
states
state is mandating that they can do
and not
that.
only that, it gets worse. You can build a second story on the garage and not require a greater setback than 5 feet. So, your neighbor could have a nice, huge structure on top of the garage. So, yeah.
Okay, so, do I hear a motion? Do I hear?
Yes, Mayor, I make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's
I'm
have
sorry.
public comment.
Public comment.
yeah,
I'm
public
sorry. Mr. Cinco,
I appreciate the haste that you were rushing to pass the ordinance, but we should probably hear from the public.
I thought this was going to be real. Okay, David Munoz, followed by Ernest Armenta, followed by Dan Blau. Good evening, Mr. Munoz.
Good evening. It's the first time I speak in this type of place.
Welcome.
So it's always nice. I wish I had a whole argument drafted, but with the arguments that we keep bringing back and forth, it's just hard to keep on track and have a nice, neat version of that. So I'm going to try to address it as clearly as possible. My name is David Munoz. I help on an office where we do mainly drafting for houses, and we deal with customers, with homeowners, with people that do this, or at least try to do this every single day. Until probably February or April this year, every time someone would show to the office asking if doing a small tiny little house separated from their house, because whether they either wanted to rent it just flat out or wanted to have a ill member of their family living there, we'll have to tell them, well, you could do it. I mean, it's possible, but it's not legal. There's just no way that you can do that. All you can do is say that it's some other type of use, but we cannot condone any of your behavior after you get your permits. We can only tell you what's possible. However, we do not. Anyways, so this law was great for a lot of people. The first time we heard about this law was in February. The law was passed on September 2016. So one would expect the city to already be aware of that, but somehow it didn't happen. The law, it specifically says that every single application has to be approved within 120 days. So I don't know if doing a moratorium on that would be unlawful or not. I'm not a lawyer. Hopefully it won't. So that's one thing. The second thing is that people are already doing this. It's not a secret. It might be like a secret everybody knows. If you can look left and right, everybody's doing it already. They're just calling it something else, or they're pretending they're not doing it, or whenever the police shows, they say, okay, give me some more time, and they make everything appear as if nothing happened. People are already doing it. People are getting just sneakier. Just like with drugs, you prohibit it, and people just keep finding another way. We see it all the time, and the sad thing is that we mainly see it as a code enforcement issue. People did it without asking anybody, and then they get caught, and then they have to fix it. And in most of the cases, they cannot afford to do it properly. So some have to knock it down, some people have to improve it, some people just take way too long to do it. So, or argument, what we would like to, just for you people to consider, is that if you just flat out say, well, people that already got their applications, they're not gonna be able to do it unless they comply with this other thing, it's just gonna make it a bit more complicated, and some people are just gonna end up doing it anyways in some other way. Just please take that into consideration. We do appreciate the work of the building and planning department. They probably the only reason why people don't get killed by poorly constructed houses. They're great. They do their job excellently. And apparently my time is out.
Thank you,
so,
Mr. Munoz.
Thank you.
Ernest Armenta, followed by Dan Blau.
Ernest Stephen Armenta. Madam Chair, I got so much invested in my home, everything, high risk, lose everything. And I think about property rights, Mr. Boyson. If I want to convert my garage, the last thing I want is government telling me. If I hire a licensed contractor and I build it, or I put something else for a family member, an attachment, it's my property rights. If my neighbors don't mind and they got it, then why should government interfere? I don't believe that we should be in moratorium. I think, Mr. Cinco, what's the reason? What happens if we don't put a moratorium? What, the house is going to start crumbling down and we're going to fall in despair? No, I don't think there's we need for a moratorium. What we want, Mr. Boyson, is we would encourage more people to invest more into their home, buy more construction material, Hire more local contractors and roofers and plumbers and electricians. That's what we want. If your neighbors don't mind, and if they do mind, then hey, we have to work it out. But I don't think, Madam Chair, that there's a need for a moratorium right now. I think that Mr. Boyson touched on something pretty significant. I guess PO job performance, right? You wait a whole year to come and bring this. And I didn't bring it up, Mr. Boyson did, so I'm against this moratorium, and I'm all for property rights, and maybe it depends on what your vote's going to be. It's election time, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. Mr. Blau?
Thank you. Well, I must tell you that I'm all in favor of your moratorium, although it's not going to fly. And we've been fighting this as the county for the past couple months, and actually what the legislature said, as I understand it, is any property is zoned residential. It's not R1. It could actually be R3 or any other residential zoning. And as far as the owner occupancy, I hope you're right. But my understanding is that's not going to fly. What the legislature wants to do is for you to be able to convert a portion of your house, add on to your house, build a separate structure on the property, and be able to rent it. And I don't understand how you could control an owner occupancy. So I build my accessory unit, and I decide to leave the property and rent out the house I'm living in. Do I need to now tear down my accessory unit? How does it work if I have to leave the property? I feel for you. It's a struggle. Not happy about it. Hate the fact that the state wants to dictate how we're going to have our communities built. But my understanding is that's what they're doing. And the other problem is the reason that you're having this, I think in the last 6 months they've changed the rules 5 times. They keep adding different criteria where, you know, before you could charge an extra fee. You could charge another water meter fee. We can't do any of that now. It's like you will let them build their unit and you will let them rent it out, and you don't have any choice. So I wish you luck, but I'm struggling with it too.
I guess if you get one of those tiny houses on wheels, whenever the legislature changes their mind, you can either wheel in or wheel out or take off the wheels.
I actually think it'd be a damn good idea to do a tiny house so you could move it around. It probably makes sense.
That was in jest. Thank you, Mr. Blau. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So I'll bring this back to the council for discussion or a motion.
I'll make the motion, exalted ruler. I'll make the motion, Mayor, that the urgency ordinance number 2017-16 be adopted to impose a temporary moratorium on the issuance of building permits for the necessary dwelling units.
And I'll second that with the understanding that we will see this before the end of the year, that we will see an ordinance before the end of the year.
Okay, I have a motion to adopt urgency ordinance number 2017-16 and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Boyson?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield? Aye. Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Okay, let's go back to, where were we? Item 4. Please, if you'd please read the title again.
You have an answer? Yes, sir. Oh.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Cuevas, but I'm going to have our clerk read the title again, but that's okay.
The City Council will consider a recommendation of the Planning Commission to review the downtown permit to construct a 33,700 square foot, 4-story mixed-use building on a .3 acre site at the corner of Main Street and Broadway in the Gateway District of the Downtown Specific Plan.
Thank you. Mr. Cuevas.
Yes, I contacted Ben and he would like to continue so we can meet with planning again and see what we can do about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we make the resolution to continue it, or do we just...
Good evening. Yes, make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Okay.
So there will be no requirement to renotice it.
Okay.
Okay. Do I need to close the public hearing then, or not? I think I already closed it. We were
You
in
already closed the
discussion.
public hearing, and all that.
Okay.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
to
Go ahead, Ms.
continue,
Waterfield.
resolution number 2017-120 in regards to the Gateway Mixed-Use Downtown Permit, DT 2017-0033 at 101 North Broadway.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second to continue Resolution 2017-120. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Boyson?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Okay, moving right along. And I am going to have a 5-minute break, and we will reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good idea, Mayor.
Can't do it to an R2. I mean, they think you can. We read it closely, but, give me a second. Go ahead. How you doing? I think I know you.
I'm Dan Blau. I've probably seen this in the county. I'd like to meet with you guys. I think there's...
I'm sorry, your name?
I think there is a solution to the problem that this is.
Okay, I'll tell
You're
you.
interested when you get back in town. Give me a holler, we can sit and meet with you and I have Lori, maybe.
Okay, I'll tell them. He'll be back next week.
Good.
All right, thank you.
All right, good.
Sure that last chapter was worth it? Oh, there you go.
Well, I don't know, the night's not over yet. I'll check the data.
Oh, that's you. Thank you for the break.
Okay. We are now going to reconvene. Madam Clerk, can you please read item number 5?
The City Council will consider approving a 2017 capital improvement plan for the 2017 growth mitigation fee program and setting 2017 growth mitigation fees.
Thank you. Staff report is being made by the Director of Public Works, Mr. Khan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm pleased to present the 2017 Growth Mitigation Program update. First, a little background of what exactly is growth mitigation. Growth mitigation was passed by the state legislature in 1987 under Assembly Bill 1600. It allows local government agencies to charge an impact fee for new development to fund the construction of capital facilities that will serve that new development. And what it does, it establishes a nexus between the development project and the public improvement, so that if a project is coming in and perhaps there's a regional traffic signal that a traffic study triggers a need for, then we would put that into the growth mitigation program to fund that as a regional improvement, a portion of it that the development makes the need of. The city has been using impact fees since 1993. So the growth mitigation program provides a mechanism that all development contributes to mitigate the impacts caused by the growth of that development, just like I had described. And it provides a uniform and consistent expectation for new development. I'd like to expound on that point a little bit. If a development comes in and we do a traffic study and a signal is needed, like I had said, that signal would be put in the growth mitigation program. So what it does, it allows for developers to be sure of the impacts of their development and what's going to be required of them. They can calculate the fee, they look at their project, the cost of their projects, and they can have a reasonable expectation of what the cost will be to develop their project, and their offsite mitigations will be, their offsite impacts will be mitigated. Projects are not entirely funded with growth mitigation funds. Only the portion that is pro rata share of their impact will be funded through the growth mitigation fees. With the remainder of the funds to mitigate the impact, we use other funding sources. And on the screen is a list of funding sources that we have used to fund the other portion of these projects, like gas tax, Measure A, CDBG, which we used on the Oakley Park, a state transportation improvement program. We use those funds to widen US 101 in the 90s to 6 lanes, and growth mitigation program didn't have to pay for it, even though it was on the list. So we use other funding sources to fund the remainder of the cost of mitigating the impact. So on this update, which was last updated in 2015, first thing we do is we update the actual cost of the projects completed since the update. So if we complete a project, we put the real cost in the program. We then calculate the cost of inflation since 2015, which was 5.85%, and we raise the price of any unfinished projects by 5.85% to keep up with inflation. We then update the new development available until build out. By doing that, we work closely with the community development department and calculate out the available square footage, so that as that footage is built, it pays its fee through the process. And then we review the capital improvement plans to see if there's any additional projects that are needed to be added that are caused by growth. So now I'd like to go over the 9 components of our program. We have the consolidated courtyard, and there's no change to that project list. We have the City Hall complex, which we also call the one-stop shop, which we propose to build in the future at the old library site. Recreation and parks, we have no change to the list. However, we did take the projects on the list and put them in a tiered format by their size, small, medium, and large, and that was the only change to that list. The police department, no changes to that list. Fire department, the same, no changes to that list. The library, no change to that list. Water and wastewater, no changes to the list. I'd like to point out that we're still using the utility scoping study, which is a good study that was used to really take a look at our water and wastewater infrastructure and see what's needed to build all the city, and that's been an excellent resource for us. And finally, the traffic. We have added 3 intersection deficiencies at Broadway and Stoll, Skyway and Fairway, and Blosser and Stoll. Those 3 projects were identified as development occurred and traffic studies occurred, and we've identified those needs, so we put them into the growth mitigation program as regional improvements. So, as a fiscal summary, we have collected to date, as of June 30th, 2017, $88 million. And we have spent $81 million. And the total program cost of all the projects from the beginning of the program until build out is $249 million. I have on the screen now a brief list of projects that we have completed with using growth mitigation funds, like Prisker Ranch Park, the police station, which we're very proud of, Fire Station 1, new library, water and wastewater facilities all over the city. College Drive, it's in construction right now, is using growth mitigation funds to build it. Blosser Road, Miller Widening, the Donovan Interchange, and the Main Street Interchange, and many others. I just wanted to give you a list that says we have done many, many projects with growth mitigation funds. So future projects, like I mentioned earlier, City Hall, one-stop shop, we still have to build that. Corporation Yard, still have to take on that. Enos Ranch Park, which the Recreation and Parks Department, and we are designing right now, and in the future, we'll be building that park. Soccer complex, which we've discussed many times at this meeting. Aquistapache Park, which is the new park that's proposed at Stoll and Depot Street. Buying police vehicles, a fire headquarters, water and wastewater facilities throughout the city. The Better AV interchange. That interchange is extremely important. We have a project going on right now to help to improve the operations of it, and there's also a project proposed combining growth mitigation funds with Measure A funds to build loop ramps to get you in the northbound direction on US 101. So that will greatly improve the operational improvements. And as the Enos Ranch fills in, those circulation projects around that development will be extremely important. The Broadway interchange, as there's development north of the city, we'll be building a new interchange at Broadway. We're already working on the design documents for that interchange so that when development does occur, we can build that with other funding sources combined. McCoy interchange and Stoll Broadway Turnpike, which I discussed earlier. So we've done many projects and we have many projects to go. I'd now like to turn to a different phase of my report. The Santa Maria Downtown Specific Plan, we all know that plan, and it establishes a vision and regulation and guidelines to revitalize and beautify and redevelop the downtown core of the city. Just like we discussed earlier about the Gateway Development Project, the Downtown Specific Plan talks about projects like that are good for the city, and this Downtown Specific Plan guides us. Staff has heard from City Council and the community leaders and the public about a need for restaurants, wineries, and breweries downtown to attract pedestrian traffic. And inside the Downtown Specific Plan, they also talk about one of the investment policies is to encourage potential reductions in growth mitigation fees in the downtown area in order to encourage growth. So staff has come up with a proposal to a 50% reduction in traffic impact fees for restaurants, including wineries and microbreweries in the Downtown Specific Plan area. That's our proposal. I would also like to talk about some existing credits that are available for uses in the Downtown Specific Plan. As we know, most of the parcels in the Downtown Specific Plan are built on or had previous uses on them. Well, the program provides for a credit against the growth mitigation fees for previous uses. So if there's an existing building on site, let's say it was a restaurant, and you put a restaurant in the building, you would pay no impact fees. That is already in the existing municipal code. Existing commercial uses could also be expanded, so restaurants, retail businesses, and offices can be enlarged up to 50% without paying growth mitigation fees. You do have to pay your sewer and water fees. Those are enterprise accounts that the users and the people have to pay for their use. So these can greatly reduce the growth impact fees on development in the Downtown Specific Plan. Several stakeholders in the Downtown Revitalization Committee thought the proposal should be expanded to include all components of the program and all land uses. So in other words, all 9 of the fees, again, except for sewer and water, they're recommending would be not paid, and it would be for all land use types in the Downtown Specific Plan. The thought was that this would encourage growth in the downtown and really spur the downtown on. Staff has continued with its recommendation because we feel it's important to keep a viable of the program while evaluating the fee reduction has a positive impact on the city's downtown. So let's take a look at the reduction in fees on restaurants over a 2-year period until December 31st, 2019. See how it spurs growth. See how it affects the growth mitigation programs. And during 2019, when we bring the program back for the 2019 update, we'll take a look at how we've done and take a look at whether we want to extend the reduction, we want to expand the reduction, or we want to reduce the reduction. The council can look at it again in 2 years, so that continues to be staff's recommendation. As the last part of the presentation, I just wanted to show you a comparison of our fees with other communities. This is for a 2,000 square foot single family residence. As you can see, Santa Maria is in the middle of the pack. with Carpinteria and Goleta leading the way at the higher numbers, Buellton at the lower numbers, and we are close to Orchid in Santa Barbara County, Solvang, and San Luis Obispo.
Excuse me,
RFPs.
Mr. Khan, 1 minute. Ms. Waterfield has a question.
Yes.
Okay, excuse
That's
me,
fine.
go back.
In the last slide, this is a comparison of a 10,000 square foot commercial development. As you can see, Goleta has really large fees, and Santa Maria is in the mix with the Paso Robles and Solvang, with Buellton having relatively low fees. And with that ends my formal presentation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Okay, Ms.
Great.
Waterfield?
You were talking so fast, I just thought, just let him go. He's on a roll. What is the status of the intersection at Stoll in Maine for that turnout? That's been an ongoing
Stolen Main,
problem.
don't cross.
Stoll in Maine.
I'm sorry, Blosser in Maine. Blosser and Main Street at the gas
Blosser and
station.
Maine. Great question. We recently worked with PG&E. They lowered and moved all of the utilities. So we moved all the wires that were up in the sky. We're doing a right-hand turn pocket from Blosser on to Main Street.
Right.
We now have the plans back into Caltrans, and we're hopeful of getting our permit and starting construction. We'll call for bids in probably 2 months and start construction as soon as the project is awarded.
I forgot about Caltrans.
What's that?
I forgot about Caltrans being
Yes.
involved. Okay.
Yes, we had a lot of Caltrans comments on the
Okay.
project.
So hopefully we'll get that soon.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Khan, you guys? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any written correspondence?
We do not have any written correspondence
Okay.
specific to this.
Okay, I'd like to open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, do you have any requests to speak in favor or in opposition?
Well, one undecided and one against.
And then we got one more.
You made it just in time, Mr. Armenta.
Okay, and three.
Okay. 3 requests to speak. Dan Blau, followed by Glenn Morris, followed by Ernest Armenta. Good evening, Mr. Blau.
Good evening again. Hopefully, it's the last time you're going to see me this year. I don't think I have more to speak about. First off, I wanted to tell you that, or I asked the question, there are new parks fees now, correct? The new calculated ones as part of this program? Yes? I want to thank Alex Posada and David Bass we made a major correction, I think, in the way the park fees are calculated, and in my view, they are now done correctly. And unlike like almost all other communities in the neighborhood around us in the state, our single-family detached fees are higher than our attached multifamily fees, which they should be. They haven't been for a long time. So I'm thankful for that. The other thing I also want to address is I'm one of the stakeholders that is suggesting that in the downtown core area that you do waive the mitigation fees. I do it for one reason. I applaud the idea that we're trying to enhance the development of the downtown, but more than that, I'm having great difficulty finding the nexus for charging those growth mitigation fees in the downtown core area. I get it when I do a project like Betaravio, where I add population to the perimeter of the city. I increase traffic, I increase populations, and that's the reason for the mitigation fees. That's the whole idea between AB 1600. But when you're talking about further concentrations in your downtown, I'm having difficulty finding the nexus. How do you determine that you need more changes to the traffic amenities as a result of the downtown? In my view, it's just the opposite. If I can concentrate the usage in downtown, I'm lessening the traffic impact because people are driving as far. You know, if I go to my laundry right now, it's across town. But if I locate myself in the middle of town, it's a shorter drive. So I'm agreeing with the stakeholders that I think you have the ability to justify not charging mitigation fees in your downtown because there's no requirement to do any infrastructure changes that are there. So I agree with the staff, the 50% reduction is great. I'd also do it not just in restaurants. The problem is that It's great if you want to attract restaurants to the downtown. I get that. One of the ways you can increase the restaurants downtown is to increase the office space. You know, if there's more office space and more retail space, you will get more restaurants because people are going to want to eat and we're going to want to walk to them and not drive across town to another restaurant. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Blau. Glenn Morris, followed by Ernest Armenta.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Let me start off by saying that we support the idea and the model of impact fees. I think it's a predictable, as Steve said, it's a good way for developers to know what they're facing and to spread the cost and the impact of those kinds of improvements throughout the community. We also want to applaud the staff for their willingness to meet with members of the industry. Dan mentioned a couple of specific kind of technical concerns that we had that they were willing to work with us on and fix, and there were some others. And I think they were very responsive in doing that, and we appreciate that. We also applaud the willingness of the city to try to incentivize and prioritize development in the downtown. Our real concern is very narrow on this one. I think we're missing, Councilmember Waterfield used the analogy of the cart and the horse. And I think we're getting the cart ahead of the horse here by focusing specifically on one segment and specifically restaurants in the downtown for special treatment. Restaurants are not leaders. They're never the first arrivals in a new market. They come because there are people there to serve. So the first thing we have to do is get people. We talked about this when we did the downtown specific plan, and the council took steps at that time to tweak that plan to attract people to the downtown, specifically doing things around events and trying to bring events into the community. But again, restaurants aren't going to come for an event audience only. They need that permanent, continuous kind of a population to serve. They need people who live close. They need people who work close. So we really think that it's important that the message that go out be that what we want to prioritize are workspaces, and to the extent we can build them in this community, living spaces in the downtown. We think that if those things happen, the entertainment component will come naturally. If it were really just about the events in the downtown, I think if you cast your mind around some of the downtown shopping centers, all of you can think of examples of restaurant spaces that in the last 3 or 4 years have been home to 4 or 5 different restaurants each. If it were just about putting a restaurant in a space that paid no fees, those would all be successful businesses, and they haven't been. And they haven't been because there's not a permanent daytime and evening population in the downtown right now. The credits do help. They can be complicated. We think making it really simple. I'm not prepared to go as far as Dan and suggest that you waive them 100%, but I do think the staff recommendation of reducing them by 50% for all zoned uses in the downtown for a 2-year period to give us a try to see if we can't turn downtown into what we want is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Armenta?
Ernest Stephen Armenta. I'm in opposition to any reduction of any fees for contractors, developers, and all the sort, like these gentlemen behind me, or at least one of them. Absolutely not. For those at home, you understand that developers and contractors and home builders association, they endorse certain candidates. They endorse certain candidates because they want, it's a connection, ladies and gentlemen. It's someone on the inside to cater to them. And the one who foots the bill at the end of the day is you at home with the higher fees yourself. You subsidize it. Ladies and gentlemen, if anything, nobody's getting no freebies, Mr. Boyson and Mrs. Waterfield. And I'm going to keep on hammering and direct these questions to you too, because both of you are running for election. And I'm going to keep on pushing this point. I prefer if it was everybody, but no one's getting a free ride here. You, all the staff, the assistant chief or the one acting here, Mr. Champion, Alex Posada, all these gentlemen, all you folks here, you depend on their mitigation fees. You want them to pay more. Your job depends on it. Your income depends on it. We are no longer the taxpayers that are gonna foot the bill. So I would say this, very simple, any reduction in any developer fees or AB 1600 fees are not gonna happen here. Now, either Madam Chair, either you guys take the action and make these hard decisions, or we'll step in as the taxpayers and the ratepayers, and we'll make the decisions for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. I'd like to close the public hearing and bring this item back to the council for discussion and/or motion.
I'd like to speak, Mayor.
Mr. Cordero.
Thank you. I'm not sure to ask this question to Mr. Khan or to Mr. Hayden, but there is a philosophy in waiving these fees for what is considered a good reason on some levels. It's not just a matter of collecting the money, whether it's $100,000 or $1 million. There are reasons to incentivize people for coming to a certain area, and although it's called waiving the fees, isn't there a larger payback that we're looking for to incentivize somebody? Can you explain the mechanics of that to me, and maybe it'll help Mr. Armenta and others in the listening public to understand?
The concept that is being proposed tonight on a deferral of 50% of the fees, as it is proposed right now for restaurants, wineries, and breweries, is to bring more foot traffic to the downtown corridor. The ability to do that would bring more sales tax, discretionary spending from a retail perspective, and more economic vitality to the downtown corridor. Your action tonight is discretionary. You can waive fees. You can increase the fees. We're basing the fees off of a certain formula right now, and we do that each time we update it every 2 years. And so Mr. Armenta did indicate that salaries of the city employees here are contingent upon the growth mitigation fees. It should be pointed out that that's not really accurate statement. The growth mitigation fees are for capital improvements. It's for brick and mortar improvements. It's for interchanges. It's for road construction. It's for capital buildings. It's not for personnel. Okay. But to answer your question, there's an economic impact. If you waive the fees, it would allow more development in the downtown corridor, which creates more activities.
So would it be safe, in Mike's language, to say that, let's just for a moment say that it's $500,000 in the mitigation fees. So the fees get waived. Maybe that's another word we need to use from waiving. I'm going to collect that $500,000 a little bit later on through the added activity and so forth. It may take a year, it may take 2 years, but the whole idea is to get the business in there and operating so that we can start to collect the incidental sales that take place. We go down to dinner, we're on our way home, and we stop and we see there's a small store there, and you buy something for one of your kids or grandkids. That kind of thing is what we're hoping to occur. We're hoping to cause to happen.
Correct, and it's an incentive. It's another way of saying it's an incentive to attract developers and businesses to the downtown corridor.
Okay, I don't know if that enlightens anybody else in the listening public, but I just wanted to make sure that my understanding of that was correct, and it is. Thank you.
Dr. Moats.
Mr. Hayden, what do you think about the proposal that we extend the 50% reduction in impact fees to commercial office space?
That would be a policy decision for the city council. I think any incentives that you can do to bring more businesses, more foot traffic to the downtown corridor on the short-term basis would be an incentive. And I think that is from an economic development standpoint, a viable option. But it is a policy decision of the city council to take into consideration.
Mr. Bison?
Well, I think Mr. Morris brings out an excellent point as far as you know, we can't really cherry pick what we want in the downtown area. And I think, you know, especially after our discussions tonight, obviously I think we're all in agreement that we'd like to attract more business to the downtown area. I mean, I kind of like the idea of reducing all mitigation fees by 50% in the downtown specific plan for a 2-year period. And let's see if we don't get some response. I'm not sure that it's going to make a difference, but yeah, I think I agree with Mr. Morris. If we just restrict it to restaurants, we may be limiting our horizons on that.
Madam Mayor, if I could make a comment?
Just one moment. I would have to agree with Councilman Boydson as well, because we do need to bring the people there. Restaurants, you're correct about restaurants are going to go where the people are. Wineries, you know, is an attraction, but it would be great to have commercial included with this project as well.
Well, I think Mr. Morris was even talking about extending it to residential within that downtown corridor, which, again, it brings more individuals to the area, and we can find out what happens.
Mr. Khan?
I just wanted to point out that the Hancock Terrace project paid approximately $3 million in growth mitigation fees recently, and why I wanted to take a phased approach is to make sure that we didn't take away too much money from the growth mitigation program. We still have a lot of projects to build that are very, very important for the community: circulation, water, wastewater, fire, and other projects. I wanted to be sure that we didn't kill the funding source, but try it as a sample.
So
thank you.
Your suggestion is just try it on a, so what would be the difference like in the downtown specific plan? I don't know if you have a ballpark number, if we excluded residential and we just included commercial, professional office space.
I don't have a number in that because I don't know what developments are coming up or what's being planned on that, so I wouldn't have an answer to that one.
I would be interested in still adding commercial, you know, leave off the residential aspect of it and
Yeah,
go with commercial.
that probably does
Yeah.
make sense.
That does make sense.
Dr. Moats?
I think it adds a level of fairness, although thinking that the councils and the people that take all of these seats in the next several years, many years, are going to have to be faced with paying those bills that Mr. Khan brings up. So it puts us in an interesting problem to deal with. So I don't know that we will gain enough money from the people doing the things that Mr. Hayden and I discussed. I don't know how much of that money we'll be able to set aside to handle some of these other projects, but it does add a level of fairness to the various businesses that we're trying to entice into the downtown area.
But I also think that we're looking at the idea that, yeah, maybe we will have to change the structure of the growth mitigation fees if this is successful. I mean, the luxurious problem would be that.
And I discussed this with Mr. Hayden a little bit yesterday, and smart business people like Ben, for instance, like Mr. Blau, are going to look at that and think that if I wait another year, I can say that I might be back up to the 100% of mitigation fees. So maybe we'll entice some investors and some entrepreneurs to get their hands into the business a little sooner. And of course, that's what we're trying to do, is to get people to bring their businesses here to Santa Maria. So. Thank you.
Okay,
Madam Mayor, if I could just make one more comment.
Yes, Mr.
I want to
Cullen.
make it clear that when we reduce these fees, we are not raising other fees to make up the shortfall, that this is just reduction in the uses that you decide, that we'll make up those fees with these funds I have on the board here. We'll take other monies from those programs. We will not be raising fees for others.
Thank you.
And
Mr. Hayden.
just one other clarification. If council goes towards the direction of waiving fees, we would caution them on not addressing or waiving any of the utility-related fees, water, wastewater, because we do need those infrastructure improvements.
And I'm not sure that I'm really prepared tonight to, go ahead and just say, okay, we're going to waive all commercial fees. I think I'd like to see it come back to council and let's analyze what the actual impact is going to be and what we're really talking about in dollars and cents. I don't think it's going to be that significant to our capital improvement plan, but I would like to see those numbers before we actually decide on that.
I would agree as well, and we're still talking about the 50%
The
reduction.
50% reduction, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion to that effect, or?
So I got a question for Mr. Khan before we do. Mr. Khan, are we under any time-sensitive issues here on doing something? Are we missing out on anything if we don't make some decision this evening? Is time a factor in making this decision tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, I would move that we approve resolution number 2017-121, adopting the capital improvement plan, but asking that the ordinance come back with revision regarding the revising the 2017 growth mitigation fees to include all commercial, not just wineries and restaurants was
So
originally
include all uses?
No, commercial uses.
Commercial.
Excluding residential. So all commercial uses in the downtown. And coming back to us with what that impact would be. So we're moving to approve the capital improvement plan itself. Adding the commercial component to it and bringing that back to us.
And telling you what the impact will be on the growth mitigation program.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I just don't know quite how I'm going to quantify it because I don't know what developments will be coming in.
I mean, can we estimate?
What's that again?
Can we estimate, square
Well,
footage?
we
of
could
commercial?
estimate, yes.
Yeah.
Let the citizen speak.
I believe we could actually approve what you talk about tonight in the ordinance. I mean, if you want to just, include it in the ordinance, you can do that tonight.
Let's see, I guess we're not communicating. We have failure to communicate.
Okay. No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right.
I think what we might be able to do is do an analysis of the undeveloped land that we have in the downtown corridor based off of square footage, see what is commercial related, and then if we're to do a ballpark assumption, we could possibly come up with some ranges
Estimates.
as to what we're talking about.
Right. Okay.
I think Mr. Blau might have had some pertinent input.
I was just going to point out
Oh,
that
he can't speak?
it's a little difficult
Mr.
to
Blau.
do that because
Mr. Blau, 1 minute. I've closed the public comment session, so I can't, but you can certainly talk to Mr. Khan afterwards and share your comments with him. Okay. Mr. Hayden, you were going to say something? Okay. Okay, so we have a motion? And a second? So we're going to adopt Resolution 2017-121 and a second, and include the analysis for commercial component. Okay. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boyson?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye. Okay, is that it?
No, the water thing.
Okay. Yep. Okay, Madam Clerk.
The City Council will consider authorizing the mayor of the City of Santa Maria to enter into the First Amendment to the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement creating the Central Coast Water Authority, and to the Third Amendment to the Water Supply Agreement with the Central Coast Water Authority for the purposes of pursuing contract assignments.
And the staff report will be made by our Director of Utilities, Mr. Springer.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Staff's recommendation tonight is for the City Council to amend the Joint Powers Agreement with the Central Coast Water Authority and the Water Supply Agreement with the Central Coast Water Authority. These amendments will give the Central Coast Water Authority the powers needed to contract directly with the Department of Water Resources. Currently, the Santa Barbara County Flood Control and Water Conservation District contracts with the Department of Water Resources and holds that water supply contract. However, all the financial obligations for the construction, operation, maintenance, and delivery of that state water are the responsibility of the Central Coast Water Agency and its member agencies. Assignment of the contract to the Central Coast Water Authority is beneficial to the city because it provides the city direct representation in decisions made relative to that water supply contract. This will reduce a layer of bureaucracy and also limit the uncertainty in conducting long-term water planning. In order to complete the assignment of the contract from the county to the Central Coast Water Authority, each member agency of the Central Coast Water Authority would be taking an action similar to what's asked of the City Council tonight. Of those 8 agencies, to date, 3 have taken action and have approved it. That includes the City of Buellton, the City of Guadalupe, and the Goleta Water District. The 4 remaining agencies intend to take action on an item similar to this next week. Following approval by all 8 agencies, what would happen is the county, the Central Coast Water Authority, and the Department of Water Resources would consider action to assign the county's rights and obligations, all of them, under that water supply contract directly to the Central Coast Water Authority. Essentially, remove the county from the loop. That completes staff report, and I'm here for any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Springer? No? Madam Clerk, do we have any requests to speak or written communications?
When?
Mr. Ernest Armenta?
Ernest Stephen Armenta, everybody laughed, huh? The last item. The Central Coast Water Authority has no savings and has no reserves. They generate no revenues. The only thing the Central Coast Water Authority has to offer is the city's general fund and increased fees on the ratepayers. Now, you being one of the members, that's what you're doing. All out of 8 members of the Central Coast Water Authority, all you need is 1 to default, then the other 7 take responsibility. 2 default, then the others take responsibility. See, ladies and gentlemen, with the city council, we're in a financial crisis. We're not in a drought. We're not desperate for more water. The purpose for this is because we want to have a direct connection with the state. And with this, and if I got this right, the Central Coast Water Authority members, Santa Maria is one of the members, you are the Central Coast that the City Council is. And what you're doing, Mr. Boyson and Mrs. Waterfield and Dr. Moats and Mr. Cordero and Madam Chair, is you're putting the general fund at risk. Because plain and simple, we the ratepayers, we're not going to incur the new cost. I will do everything I can to encourage everybody, because remember, it's a vote by ballot mail when you want to increase the fees. If you don't get it from us, then who you get it from? The developers. And if you can't get it from the developers, who does it come from? It comes from the police officers and firefighters and every single employee in your contract and your benefits. It has to. If you don't get it from developers, they're not going to pay the cost. What, the city's going to go out and borrow? It's either default, reconstruct, or inflate. And the practice has been of this city council is to inflate on the ratepayers. So I'm opposed to it. You can make the decision you want, but remember, use caution, Mr. Cordero. We, the ratepayers, are going to, I will do everything I can to encourage all ratepayers to sign and vote by mail to oppose any increased fees. And mark my words, once the ratepayers say no, Mr. Hayden will tell you, or Mr. Sidwell will explain to you very clearly. Where else, if you ain't going to get it from the ratepayers, where does it come from, Madam Chair? And I think that's an answer right now that I think that you should ask the staff, management. If we can't get the increase to pay this, where are we going to do it? Are we going to borrow? We're going to increase the impact fees, AB 1600 fees, or we're going to get it from the workforce, the employees? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any written communications?
No, Madam Mayor, we do not.
So I'll bring this item back to the council for discussion and/or a motion.
Madam Mayor, if there's
Mr. Boyce?
no other discussion, I would move for the adoption of resolution number 2017-122.
I'll second that.
I have a motion to adopt resolution 2017-122 and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boyson?
Aye.
Councilmember Cordero?
Aye.
Councilmember Moats?
Aye.
Councilmember Waterfield? Madam Mayor Patino?
Aye.
It's late.
Next order of business is a public comment period. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
This time is reserved to accept comments from the public on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council, not otherwise scheduled on this agenda. And we have one request to speak.
I even guessed it was going to be you,
I'm
Mr.
gonna have to
Amanda.
participate, Madam Chair.
Thank
See,
you.
everybody's at home, and I understand that they work hard.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Trying to make ends meet, trying to keep the marriage together, trying to keep our kids on a straight and narrow path, trying to teach them and show them that God is good, trying to show them that, hey, working hard and being honest is a good thing. Being decent is a good thing. Having an income is a good thing. Participating and voting is a great thing. But the simple fact is that we're in a financial crisis. See, we're not going broke, we are broke. That's a direct quote from Tim Ness and Mr. Hayden. Mr. Hayden came and told us we're in a financial crisis, Madam Chair. We don't have money to build playgrounds. We don't have money to build fire stations. We don't even have money to fix the Santa Maria Police Department new building's roof. You have to come to us. We have to bail you out, Madam Chair. So when I hear that new development and I hear AB 1600 fees, I think and I see it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't fall for it, ladies and gentlemen. We have a council for fine, decent people, ladies and gentlemen. I have no personal agreements, but it's time for a serious change. I'm not in favor of districts. I like citywide elections. But if it was up to me, I think, Madam Chair, I even hate regretting this. You remember when, Madam Chair, when the Santa Maria Police Officers Association was over here calling you every name in the book? Remember they thought you were just some broad from Tiger Town? Remember they would say that you were worthless? That it was all your fault? And you remember who the people they were running with? They're right here sitting next to you, Miss Patino. Did you ever see Edward Waterfield come to this podium and speak on your behalf? How about Mike Cordero? How about Jack Boyson? How about Dr. Moats? Did you ever see any of them? Did you ever see any one single Santa Maria police officer come up here and say, you know what, that is not me. I don't support my association. I don't want to be involved in politics. Did you ever see any single firefighter come up here and say, you know what, this is an embarrassment and a shame, we don't play like that? Have you become complacent, Ms. Patino? Are you comfortable? Do you think right now that they would grieve and mourn the Santa Maria Police Officers Association if you were removed? Ms. Patino, this sounds harsh and it sounds rude and offensive and aggressive and every combative. But I want these 4 council members out. Plain and simple. It is disturbing, Ms. Waterfield. It is disturbing if I was an elected official and I seen some public member of the public telling me that they want me out when I'm over here trying to do good. We want changes. We want to see everybody pay their fair share. No freebies, no 50%, no 2 times, you know what I mean? Madam Chair,
Thank you,
I said
Mr.
enough
Minton.
and I'll come back and we'll go back at it again.
Thank you.
Okay?
Elizabeth Schneider. Sorry for the confusion, Ms. Schneider. We had you filed wrong.
Okay. I'm here to speak in favor of the proposed downtown project. More housing units are needed in the downtown, and as discussed, this would be a gateway project to entice other developers to site their businesses in the downtown. I strongly support Dr. Moats and Councilman Boyson's views on this project. I too wear a Fitbit, Dr. Moats, and I walk as often as I can. And when I'm not walking, I'm driving a brand new Prius. I disagree. I believe that potential tenants are smart enough to decide for themselves if the parking arrangements work for them or not before they sign a lease. They don't need paternalistic comments from Councilwoman Waterfield and Councilman Condero. These people are smart. They don't need you to tell them whether they can walk from their parking. They know their lifestyle. You don't. The Stereo Shop site has been abandoned for years. No one has jumped on the site, and it could sit exactly like it currently is for years. This is a prime opportunity to jumpstart the downtown. How long have we been having this silly conversation? And a perfect project comes before you, and you want to strike it down? You're sending mixed messages, council members.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, that concludes public comment for this evening. Now we have a report by the City Manager, Mr. Hayden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the City Council, the next City Council meeting will be 3 weeks from this evening, not 2 weeks, 3 weeks, November 7th, starting at 5:30, our new start time. We have a couple of consent agenda items, a crosswalk by Jimenez School, a annexation of parcels that we'll be taking a look at into the landscape maintenance districts, and then also an agreement for professional landscaping at Enos Ranch. The public hearing that we may have next time is the massage license, along with taking a look at 2 regular business items. One is the Block Grant Advisory Committee Capital Projects Proposal, and then the next one is the Mayor's Task Force on Youth Safety, the proposed action plan for your consideration. 2 announcements that I wanted to have this evening. One is to let the public know that next Monday and Tuesday night, October the 23rd and 24th, the Downtown Streetscape Plan outreach meetings are going to be held at Shepherd Hall. That'll be next Monday night and Tuesday night, starting at 6 o'clock until 8 p.m. Those will be coordinated through a consultant, trying to get some ideas on a streetscape plan for the downtown corridor. Also at this time, I'd like to turn over the microphone to our Director of Community Development, Mr. Ng. He has an important announcement to make this evening with an introduction of one of our newest staff members.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you may know, the Community Development Department has been operating without a planning division manager for the last 4.5 months. Very pleased to announce the hiring of Ryan Hostetter, and I'll give her a few minutes to introduce herself.
Good evening.
Good evening, council members. Ryan Hostetter. I'm humbled to be here, and it's been it's my second day, and it started with a bang, and I'm happy to be here to support the efforts of your council and your community members. And I didn't come from very far away from San Luis Obispo County, and happy to stay here on the Central Coast and further my career and learn from you all and from your community members on how to help and foster the vision for the city. So thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And that concludes our report for this evening.
Thank you. So now we will have oral reports of council members. How about you? We'll start with you, Mr. Cordero.
Thank you, Mayor. I have very little to report this evening under AB 12234. I attended today, as a matter of fact, a Community Action Commission meeting, and we're getting ready to welcome a new CEO for Fran's replacement. I think that our entire county will be pleased with what she has to offer. I do want to mention that, although it's not a regular reporting issue, that I attended the fire department's display last Saturday at the Station 1, And I would certainly encourage the listening public and anybody to go and listen and watch and see the things that they do to prepare themselves to go out and handle the emergencies in our homes. I was telling Chief Champion that I remember coming to work as a young police officer, and we started out with a clipboard and a flashlight and a jacket if it was cold, and that was it. There was no portable radios or any of these things, and now there's just tons and tons of equipment. They have a special truck that holds all this equipment that they can draw from in order to address most any emergency. So I would strongly encourage people to go and see what our firefighters are capable of doing and what they do with relative to getting into vehicles that are so mangled you can't get a door open, or getting into vehicles that are crushed and we need to cut the tops of them off. To some people probably think that's just a relatively easy task. It's not. And it's a calculated move on the part of these men and women, and I would certainly encourage us to learn more about what our first responders do, particularly the fire department. That's all I have to report, Exalted Druid. That's all I have to report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Cordero. Dr. Moats.
Madam Mayor, I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Waterfield?
October the 4th, I attended Minerva's luncheon, grand luncheon that they kick off the beginning of the year. On Thursday, October 5th, I attended the LAFCO meeting in Santa Maria. On Monday, October the 9th, I attended the Strategic Plan on Youth Safety at Abel Maldonado Youth Center. Wednesday, October the 11th, the Santa Maria Police Council held their membership social, and we had our police chief, Phil Hansen, speak, unbeknownst to him, I suppose. On Thursday, later that day, I attended the Boys and Girls Club Back a Youth Night, and that was the first time I've ever attended that, and that was just really great. We got to group up with youth and go to different activities that the Boys and Girls Clubs have to offer, and I believe that's it.
Mr. Boyson.
Madam Mayor, the only AB 1234 I need to report is that I did attend the SURF board meeting. SURF Development Company is the 501c3 nonprofit subsidiary of the Housing Authority, County of Santa Barbara. A little discouraging, the Depot Street project was not funded in the second round of tax credits in March, so they're going a little bit of a different direction, hoping that next year they'll be able to combine with some home funding from the county, as well as combined with some mental health money from the state of California, and some less competitive 4% tax credits. Tax credits are obviously very, very complicated, but they're hoping that they will still be able to put the deal together and feel confident that they will be able to. But again, it's going to be delayed a bit longer. And of course, this affordable housing is desperately needed, that would fill a need for some very significant needy individuals within our community. That's all I have.
Thank you. October 4th, I attended the annual Minerva Club opening luncheon. Later that evening, I spoke at the Elks Lodge to the Little Antlers, and that was ages 10 through 18. October 9th, the Strategic Plan on Youth Safety at the community meeting. October 10th, I spoke at the North County Mayor's. I spoke regarding the North County Mayor's Task Force down in San Ynez. October 11th, I attended the North County Sub-Regional meeting. Later that day, I went to a screening on resilience at the Santa Maria Bonita School District. That evening, I attended the Santa Maria Police Council social. On October 12th, I went to the Boys and Girls Club Back a Youth Night. October 14th, which was Saturday, I also did went over to the fire department on the open house, and which was there were some kids there. It was really sort of interesting. I wish more people would come out to see what our policemen are doing. I also went to the Special Olympics 2017 North Divisional Fall Games. And today, the 17th, I did the Ben Hayes Show. I went to a ribbon cutting at the Black Bear Diner and did an interview with Susan Salcedo, Santa Barbara Education Office, and that is it. Oh, yes, I attended the Mayor's Ball. That's right, on the 14th, with the rest of the mayors of northern Santa Barbara County. So now the City Council will now recess to a closed session. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title of the closed session?
Conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Section 54957.6 of the Government Code. Agency representatives are the City Manager and Director of Human Resources and Records. The employee organizations are the Service Employees International Union, Local 620, Santa Maria Police Association of Middle Management, Santa Maria City Firefighters Union, Local 2020, non-represented management and confidential employees, and public safety managers.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes tonight's council meeting. Good night.